Hello everybody, my name is Dace Campbell. I think have met just about everybody here. It's so good to see everybody in person, so thanks for coming, many of you from all the way around the world. I am your competition manager for the XR Prize. It's been absolutely lovely to work with so many of you over the past several months. Before we get going though, I really want to introduce some of my colleagues. Most of them are wearing purple shirts. We've got Goopy right here to my right. We've got Sam in the back. We've got Dino in the white shirt. Many of my other colleagues from AWE are here as well, including Ori, Nathan, Andrea, Antigone. Many of you have corresponded with many of them, so big thanks to them. They'll be popping in and out of the room as the night goes on, so feel free to say hi. And of course, thanks to Kevin and Rick and the Reaction AV team. Let's get going. So a big welcome and congratulations to everybody who's made it to this point in the competition. And a big welcome to everybody joining us online. We have a Zoom call going right now recording this that we'll be able to use to distribute the recording following this. So welcome to the XR Prize Challenge, the final judging and presentation. As you all know, this is a $100,000 prize competition. Harnessing XR to fight climate change. We started way back in 2022, where we had literally hundreds of teams engage as a part of this prize from 6 continents. We didn't get anybody from Antarctica, but there's always next time. And we established 4 categories for ways that XR could help address or fight climate change. One of those is to replace wasteful materials and practices. Another one is to visualize the causes and impacts of climate change. Third, to educate people about the solutions to climate change. And then finally, for professionals to use XR to optimize design and execution of climate solutions. So from that early days, way back in 2022, and those hundreds of teams, we have slowly narrowed it down to 11 finalist teams who are here tonight. Those 11 finalist teams represent 21 countries from 5 continents. And just a side note, but an important one, the majority of the teams here are represented or led by women. Before we get too far into this, I do want a special shout out to the technical partners who have engaged us in the competition. Many of you finalists and many others who have engaged in the competition have taken advantage of these solutions throughout the past several months. And then also a special shout out to our sponsoring partners, without whom this wouldn't have been possible and without whom your flights here would not have been possible. So definitely a shout out to those who contributed. And then last but not least, I want to do just a very quick introduction to the judges. Many of you have seen them, read about them online. But from my left or your right, very quickly, we've got Bob Fine, of course, with IVRHA, Tom Furness, the grandfather of virtual reality with the Virtual World Society. We've got Marina Saros with Unity, Sarah Syed with You Are the Change, and finally, Erica Woolsey from the Hydros. They represent a wide variety of opinions, points of view, and perspectives about climate change and XR. Some have more expertise on the climate change side, some have much more expertise on the XR side. And just a special note, between Tom and Sarah, we are bookending the widest possible range of generations affected by climate change here today. And those judges, of course, will be looking and reviewing your submissions and your presentations according to these criteria. These criteria have not changed dramatically from early days in the competition, but just a quick review, you'll be judged on your creativity, the creativity of your submission or your presentation, the functionality of your submission, the impact it delivers, and then a little bit of an X factor. The judges will know it when they see it. A slight difference from the MVP is there's going to be greater emphasis on the real-time experience and greater emphasis on the impact that your submission delivers onto climate change. That said, this is our schedule for today. As you all know, you have 15 minutes each. There's a hard stop at that 15-minute time. Please give yourselves about 10 minutes to present and about 5 minutes of Q&A for the judges. We have a 15-minute timer here, keeping you on track. I think we even have a little gong or buzzer or something to let you know when you've hit that limit. And then we'll have a very quick 1-minute turnover between teams. So, without further ado, I want to get us started. And so please welcome Ed Harrison to the stage to present Between Two Worlds.
Okay. First, I'd like to say a quick thank you to the judges for shortlisting our project, and Dace. It really is an honor being here pitching to you today. I'm Ed Harrison, co-founder of Under the Skin, which I started with my brother James back in 2015. We create interactive artwork in the name of wildlife conservation. Interactivity has always been a core part of our project from the start. But where did it all begin? Under UV light, the skeletons are revealed. All that's left of the species falls into the darkness of extinction. And now we're evolving our idea to help to protect wider habitats and combat climate change through this new and innovative augmented reality app. The app is about awareness, education, action, and ultimately protecting and restoring wildlife to help combat climate change. Let's get into the demo. Our app is called Between Two Worlds, and we collaborated with Sebastian Valls, who built it in Unity. As I said, the app is about awareness, education, and action. Our app transforms our framed prints into virtual portals to reveal the animals in their healthy and thriving habitats. But 2 future worlds are possible for each animal, one of hope and the other of destruction. Palm oil plantations are one of the biggest threats to orangutans today, and clearing the rainforest releases huge amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. Oh, thank you. I was in the zone. Okay, let's try that again. Our app transforms our framed prints into virtual portals to reveal the animals in their healthy and thriving habitats. Palm oil plantations are the biggest threat to orangutans today and release huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This is an example of some of the educational content which I designed, and there'll also be a palm oil quiz where users can learn about everyday products that contain palm oil. Now, because this is an MVP, we wanted to focus on the augmented reality aspect of the project, but I'm going to talk about the donate and act sections in the slides because they're currently under development. Now let's dive into the ocean. This is the critically endangered vaquita porpoise. Scientists estimate there's less than 10 of these in the world today. At the click of a button, we're transported to the bottom of the ocean, where gill nets capture and suffocate not just vaquitas, but countless other species. And just as with the orangutan, users will have the opportunity to learn, donate, and act. We're now exploring different scales of prints to get this app out to a wider audience. So these smaller prints are created digitally, so even though they don't have the magic UV effect, it means that we can get this app scaled and out to a wider audience. So the augmented reality app works with the framed prints all the way down to the postcards. We call them wildcards. So what's next for the app? We're following the lean startup approach. Build, measure, learn. It's about getting the app into people's hands, getting feedback from users, and building and measuring and learning as we go, just so we can evolve the app based on user feedback. There's 3 ways we deliver impact: learn, donate, act. We're going to evolve our content to explicitly show how saving a single species can help to combat climate change. For example, we're evolving the infographics so that users can learn about carbon sequestration in an easy-to-understand and engaging format. We're going to gamify the app to motivate users to learn about different environmental issues. For example, the palm oil scan app. Correct answers will plant a tree in the environment. Incorrect answers will degrade the habitat in augmented reality. Following our current business model, we donate 20% to our partner NGOs. There will also be the option for in-app donations. In context of our orangutan charity, there's 2 sides of their conservation work funded by donations: orangutan conservation and rainforest conservation. Saving orangutans means saving wild places which have the potential to store huge amounts of carbon in the atmosphere. The ACT section will empower users to take action. We'll link them to external resources like petitions and the Palm Oil Scan app. So which animals are next? So far, we've focused on protecting habitats to save endangered species and other wildlife. We call them the Wildlife Guardians. Now we're focusing on a new range of animals that help to tackle climate change themselves front on. We call them the Climate Warriors. This is the new idea. The key difference is helping them helps us. Here's how it works. Scientists are just beginning to understand the interconnected relationship between keystone species in the carbon cycle. Here's an example local to you in California, the iconic sea otter. Sea urchins are devastating kelp forests which have the potential to store huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. Luckily for us, otters have a hungry appetite and feed on the sea urchins. This helps kelp forests to flourish and enables them to store more carbon by up to 1,100%. And there's loads of examples out there in the animal kingdom, each one with a fascinating story behind the statistic that we can bring to life through augmented reality. This side of the app puts keystone species back into the picture to help restore ecosystems and make them more resilient to climate change and ultimately store and capture more carbon. And just like the other animals, there'll be the opportunity to learn, donate, and act. So how are we going to scale it? We're developing a range of products at different price points so we can reach a global audience. Only the large screen prints will have the UV effect, but the augmented reality will work with every single print, and the app will be free with every product. Marketing strategy will be key. That's why we're going to focus 50% of our time on the build and the other 50% of our time on the marketing, getting the app out there. At the core of our strategy is partnerships with NGOs, and we're so proud to have partnered with some of the biggest names in wildlife conservation already. It's a symbiotic relationship. We donate 20% of our proceeds to the NGOs, and in return, they promote our products to a global audience through their various marketing campaigns. Our own marketing strategy will follow the Bullseye framework. Now, I'm not going to delve into each of these now because of time restraints, but these are our 6 initial channels we're going to focus on, and I can talk about these later if we have time, but obviously things have changed a little bit under the circumstances. These are our testing tools so that we can measure the success of our channels. We'll focus and double down on those 3, and then repeat the process all over again. So far, I've talked about how our app can positively impact wildlife and carbon sequestration. But what about human behavior? Some have said we've created a powerful medium of visual storytelling, and we're pushing the boundaries of art activism. We've helped museum visitors of all ages to engage with big, heavy topics like habitat loss and climate change in a fun, accessible, and engaging way. We've even promoted further discussions of climate change at school, and for us, this is what it's all about. Goals. These are our 6-month goals based on current activity, and these are our 12-month goals. We anticipate the launch of the Between Two Worlds app in conjunction with scaling up our digital printing operation will massively increase traction. We'll collaborate with scientists and our NGOs to get stats and figures on the carbon sequestration values based on donations. Our vision. We can see Between Two Worlds on the walls of schools around the world, with an interactive exhibition touring the globe, in world-renowned galleries and museums, on phones and in people's homes, so they can learn about the animal kingdom and biodiversity loss and take action against climate change. Thank you.
How will you spend the $100,000?
I'm glad you asked that question. Let me go to a slide that conveniently was at the very, very end. Yeah, this is approximately what we're going to be looking at. Obviously, this may change when we get feedback, but we're looking at splitting developing costs, design costs, animation costs, and marketing, because we feel those are all key to the success of this app. Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you'll use this in museums?
So luckily, we're already getting this out into museums. The first exhibition we've got, well, one of several exhibitions we've got is coming up in October. So Sea Shepherd have converted an old vessel into an innovative educational space where they bring in school kids and inspire the next generation. So we're going to be using it primarily starting with these species, but over the years, as we evolve the collection to be, well, basically an interactive experience for school children to learn about these animals and hopefully a takeaway message so they can go home and go back to class and continue the conversation. And we've also got a partnership with the Oriel Sciences at Swansea University. So they've this month, in a few days, they're going to be putting on our exhibition, and they work with, they have an outreach project where they work with underdeveloped schools that don't have much money, and they bring them in to get access to science and nature in new ways. So does that answer your question?
It does, actually. I have a question for Dace now. Sorry, Dace, but I'm wondering, this is mostly our question time. Are we allowed to give feedback or thoughts?
Yeah, I mean.
Sure.
Okay. I think this is wonderful to think of, especially about the science museums and zoos and aquaria, more than I would think like fine art is, you're probably going for the science museums. And there's a lot of them that have temporary exhibition space and short-term exhibitions, and like at Cal Academy here in San Francisco, there's a Thursday night thing. And as you're thinking about how to get some early wins and get installed in some of those museums, one easy way to do that might be to go in with the sort of shorter term exhibition or Thursday night type of thing, so that you, so that you're able to have displayed there and you get some early feedback without having to go through the giant process of doing a whole new installation that's there for like several months.
Thank you. Yeah, pop-ups is something we've been doing as well, and we've actually done some in the past in the Natural History Museum in Oxford, where the easels works great as well. You can go into a space and it's flexible. So yeah, thank you. That's brilliant feedback.
All right, I'll go again. Who are the researchers that you're working with to get that wonderful story of the climate warrior species?
Oh, me.
Lovely. Okay.
And if we've got time, I can show you. These are sort of the revenue channels that we're looking at. The new one is corporate partnerships. We see that as a potential outlet. And if you can see on the timeline, we're about 3 months in, so we're already getting this out to the museums and NGOs, which is going to be essentially our testing ground for the app, so that we can refine it a little bit more before getting it onto iOS and Android, and then we can get it into the hands of direct customers and start potentially getting corporate partnerships so we can start generating revenue. And that will give us a bit more time then to refine a product that will go into schools as well. But thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Ed, in between two roles.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, so Acellus XR, please step to the back to get your microphones on and finalize your AV. And please also welcome Abby Fletcher and Nico Hardy to the stage to present LoJacking.
Yeah, amazing. Hello, I'm Abby.
I'm Nico. Hi.
And this is LoJacking, correcting creative control. we want to use community as a catalyst to explore the action and visualize the causes and impacts of the climate crisis. We want to start with a question. Which would you choose? You're quite thirsty, and these two adverts come. It's which one would you think about using? Have you got the...
Yeah, which one would you think is the more climate-friendly product? It's an open question. The one on the right, the one on the right? The one on the right, yeah? So now if you would use your apps there, please, and just press on the Scan Now button, and point them at the adverts, you will see some graphics pop up that will tell you whether this product or this brand is actually helping or hurting the environment. What it does, has a rating that is based on the ESG, the environmental and social governance rating that these companies have. So you will see on your decisions there that actually Sunny D is a more environmentally friendly choice than Innocent Smoothies.
And what we want to do is try and show the power of advertising and how things like the halo that you just mentioned and how that innocent smoothie is actually 2 of your 5 a day, but how much is it polluting the planet? Another example is how we can replace some of the negative adverts, but actually we also want to highlight some of the positive ones too. So now if you use your app, you can also scan to see the positive impacts.
Now, while the first example that you saw was very simple with the graphics, this one is a bit more complex and has a bit more animation to really champion this content and this brand, but also to make the content engaging and memorable.
We want these adverts to come alive so people can really feel like they're part of it. And the classic Coca-Cola. So what we want to do here is digitally expose some of these to show the environmental impacts. And for you guys that can't see the entertainment that's going on here, we can play a little video that we took earlier to just show exactly. So by replacing and replicating these adverts, you can start to see how these big businesses have a huge impact on the environment, and it tells you exactly how. So, who are we? So I'm Abby. I am a lecturer at the University of the Arts London, and I'm a climate activist and a creative producer. So I manage the Climate Emergency Network.
And I'm Nicholas. I've been working in the VR industry for the last 8 years, designing all sorts of apps as a product designer.
So what we want to do is try and expose and show exactly how much the power of design can have on the climate emergency. So the average American is exposed to now 4,000 to 10,000 ads per day. So that is almost triple the ads from the early 2000s. So there is a lot of power to play. And what we want to do is try and correct it. So we want to rewrite the future of advertising using both creativity and AR to build honest stories, more transparent stories, to shape behavior and shift mindsets. So by democratizing the urban landscape through this new app, what we want to do is try and protect the biodiversity and actually stop these billboards from being built and actually rewrite over them through hijacking them. So just like being inspired by street art movements and street activism, what we want to do is try and rebuild them to criticize those polluting brands and replace them with positive actions. Who we want to target? We want to target everyone. I think it's ambitious to say that, but actually we're targeted every day by brands. If you think about adverts, we see them constantly through our phones, through driving down the road. And what we want to do is try and call them out. And a way that we want to do that is through designing a framework that provides the intrinsic tools for not just us, but communities to actually use the app. And what we want to do is have an open source software that we can offer to organizations, charities, education sectors in order to allow people to submit their designs and also hijack adverts in their area. So for example, if you were to see an advert that kept popping up for you to buy some flip-flops, And what we want to do is, if that advert's frustrating you because you know that that's a polluting brand, you can have the opportunity to use your design and be able to design and upload it to the site to harness your own power. So this will help accelerate, but also upskill the next generation. They're the ones going to be heavily impacted by the climate crisis. And what we want them to be is change agents. So we want this app to uplift and accelerate and amplify their individual agency to nurture the future leadership.
And yeah, we want to harness the power of XR by doing so. We want it to be a very accessible experience, an easy experience, something where you just lift your phone and you get the information that you need. And we want to expose those brands and if they're good or if they're bad. We want to see that and show it to the world. We want to start impersonating. That's an option. We can impersonate their adverts and play with their words. And we want to provoke those ads or those brands to become better. And this is an example of how users could contribute their own content. You might just see an advert. You can take a picture of it and upload it with your own comments or with your own animations.
So by using this local action, we're able to ignite and encourage people to do it in their own area. And what we want to try and do is support local city planners and governments, so their judgment of the adverts that go up in their local area, and try and change that. So what these advertisements want to do is change consumer cultures through various aspects, through tools like QR codes, reactions, simple stickers that can also be graffitied onto existing adverts. So people have their own way of preventing greenwashing. The way we want to do this is measuring the impact through a theory of change. So a theory of change is a methodology that illustrates and measures how meaningful social change can happen on a larger scale. So by mapping the different activities from the pillars we've provided, we've got who the activities could be from short term to long term. So using the power of R and AR, we want to build stories that can change these mindsets.
So the way you would read this is one of our pillars, we want to impact spaces and community. We do that by building this collaboration hub app so we can reach our goal, which is to nurture a strong sense of belonging and greater bonds in our community. The second thing we want to achieve is we want to impact the ecosystem, which we will do by involving stakeholders to co-design the solutions and to deepen our relationships across sectors to foster creative collaborations. And the last thing is we want to impact capital, and we'll do that by creating investment readiness programs and backing low-jacking communities to bridge that XR and art talent gap.
And through that, we can also, our main tools would be a citizen science group approach. So using the public to voluntarily be a part of the scientific research, so it's constantly being developed. We have campaign KPIs through social listening measurements and billboard footfall, and obviously press and media. For example, if there was a famous artist that wanted to expose a brand that they have certain feelings towards, then it would build a higher, better performance indicator. And then we can measure that through the network traffic analysis, through the changes over time.
And just to tie it back into that Coca-Cola example from earlier, every plastic bottle it has an 82-gram footprint. So if we could just convince our 3,000 Instagram followers that the Climate Emergency Network has now to have one bottle less per day, then we'd be saving 1,700 kilograms of carbon a week. Now, the bigger impact we could also have is on the next slide. If you look at our example of Coca-Cola, they sell 3,000 plastic bottles per second, and research shows that 69% of users are willing to change their behavior, then we could actually save 16,000 tons per day. Now, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is just how we can change the actual user's behavior. Now, similar apps on the App Store have around 50,000 users. So if we aim for a 10% reduction in their footprint of those users, then we will be saving 43,000 tons of carbon every year.
So what we want to do is deepen our connection, not with just ourselves, but both people and planet. And we want to support anxiety and helplessness associated with the crisis and build cultures across the community. We want to use the community as a compass. We want that to build individual agency. So it's not just us developing the app, but actually it can consider the impacts of social inequality and also look at well-being, which is a huge part of the sector that's needed. So next time you're really thirsty, expect the unexpected, because adverts are everywhere. So LoJacking can help make your decision and make it both better for people and planet. Tell truths, take action, and seek justice.
Thank you for that presentation. My question is, how do you anticipate these companies reacting to this LoJacking, both ones that you celebrate and ones that you criticize? And is there any kind of prerequisite for litigation, especially considering it's a very modern take on political graffiti?
I think the most important thing to say is creatives are known to be activists and challenge the societal norms. And I think with the escalating crisis, I think it's super important for us to be brave, be bold, and actually utilize that. And I think by using the support of communities, we can start to build individual agency. And I think that's really important to this. So with these larger corporations, we could perhaps collaborate with some of them in order to be, if LoJacking was to become a much larger scale objective, then what we could do is have them be a part and partner with us so they can lower or higher their ESG. So they can provide us with the data to help us to help you.
So can you go back to the slide that starts with the pillars?
The theory of change?
Right there. So can you maybe share a little bit on how do you get just starting from the pillars to the next round, to who? How do you have some plans on how you're going to reach the founders, the NGOs, the investors?
Yeah, so we want to start it as a movement that is from the grassroots. I think that's the most important part. They're the people that are often heavily impacted, and what we want to do is look at the ecosystem as a whole. So we will start by calling out and using education, which is what I work in order to develop. So we would start by the impact space and community, which is at the top. And then from when we're building the social startup founders, so this would be people that we work with, so through workshopping. And then it would be to build the collaboration hub. So it starts here, and then we go into the ecosystem. So it's kind of, we would want to nurture a sense of belonging. And once we feel like we have got a greater bond with our community, then we can start to go into these NGOs. I don't think we can do that right now, because what we need to do is build the community that goes alongside it.
I love the presentation, and as a youth activist myself, I think this is something so important. I do have one question about the app. Will it be costing, like, will there be a fee for someone to download it?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
that would be against what we stand for, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I think it would be through partners that it would gain money, but actually that's something that we've developed this together for this open call in order to see how it would work. But it wouldn't make sense for it to be a costed app at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
to Abby and Nico. So thank you, LoJacking. Origin XR, please step to the back to get your microphones on and finalize any AV. As we welcome Daniel Sauter and Elena Xinyu Peng to the stage to present Ocellus XR.
What do you know about the climate risks in your neighborhood? We hear a lot today about how climate change is already affecting cities in significant ways, causing major damage, and is only projected to worsen in coming years. But where are the tools that help us understand the nature and location of those risks?
In New York City, for example, the recent storm like Ida has broke all previous results for extreme rainfall and caused devastating flooding throughout the city.
And yet heat waves cause more deaths than any other hazard. and is also disproportionately affecting low-income and minority neighborhoods.
Tropical storm like Hurricane Sandy has made it clear that New York residents need actionable information at their fingertips to understand climate risk and to protect their family and community.
This is why we made Oxelos SR. Oxelos is a bee's eye view of the world, a single focused lens that shows how and where and who is exposed to climate risk in cities.
This app is built on the design, research, and engagement work of Urban System Lab to foster equitable and resilient cities.
And to build tools that help us understand how vulnerable populations are exposed to climate change in cities.
This work is critical to enable targeted adaptation solutions where they are needed the most.
We believe that not only do we have to rapidly decarbonize our economy, but ESG and other priorities must recognize the risks that are already built into our climate systems and take climate adaptation seriously in consideration.
Oxelos XR allows users to discover social, ecological, and technological infrastructure data live at street level and also remotely by displaying city map onto physical surfaces.
The platform comes preloaded with the latest data from the city and the New York City panel on climate change and is designed to support preparedness effort for extreme heat and flood events.
So why do we need Oxelos?
To date, there are few ways for communities to understand how social vulnerable populations are exposed to climate risks and what the city is actually doing to mitigate them.
We believe that making this data more accessible and more meaningful than for individuals, there is a potential to increase preparedness and resilience planning.
And therefore, we're not doing this work alone. We've held co-design sessions with our local partners in New York and made sure to incorporate their contributions into the platform to ensure impact.
For example, the graphic and information included in the section, What Can I Do?, was developed by the We Act for Environmental Justice and other as the Climate Ready Uptown Plan.
And so as part of this MVP process, we have tested the app, we've collected observation data, and we also built a roadmap based on that feedback.
The Architecture League of New York and New York State Council on Art, Architecture, and Design awarded us an independent project grant last year, underlining the meaning of the adaptation information.
And since then, we've presented the platform to the co-chairs of the New York City panel on climate change who have expressed interest in collaborating.
NPCC provide actionable and scientific information on future climate impact, in which the city has committed more than $20 billion to adaptation effort.
We're launching the app on August 1st with a feature profile from the New School's marketing and communication team who produced that for us.
Along with this press release, this will expose the platform to more than 1,500 educators, thousands of students, and university community at large.
Yes, and we also secured a partnership with New School's XR Lab in order to hold train-the-trainer sessions, in order to hold open lab hours, and to help us fulfill the public mission of the project with in-kind support, infrastructure, devices, and open lab hours.
So my name is Elena. I'm the Unity engineer for the Oxelos XR.
And I'm Daniel Sauter, the project lead.
We hope to leverage Oxelos XR not only as a means to visualize risks,
but also as a way to change how we think about, plan, and design our cities. So together with our team at the Urban Systems Lab, we look forward to advancing this work and to also have plenty of ideas how to create a citizen science platform from this as well.
Now we are very happy to take your question as we are switching to the demo and the Q&A section.
And we'll have a roadmap for you at the end, but we want to get to your questions first.
So 2 questions. How will you make the public aware that the application exists and they can use it? And then any thoughts on how to expand it to other cities?
Yeah, exactly. That's the roadmap. But the first part, we are in New York City a fairly known lab with networks that reach into local work, including $2-3 million flood plans that we've collaborated on, and the New York City Panel on Climate Change, our director Timon McPherson is part of. So we are in this case connected, but we are supporting the citizen science and science communication platform for those existing relationships. So we're not starting from scratch there, and this comes out of listening sessions from extreme climate event networks, which we've been part of for 4 or 5 years in 11 cities across the Americas. So in terms of having this out in an app store and a Play Store, this closes now the gap between the science folks that we are close with and the public that needs to be able to have capacity transfer, hold workshops themselves. That's why this kind of interface as a public university with a lab that people can walk in, things we can't do ourselves in terms of training, plus the research that is a larger network is essentially our goal to expand. In terms of other cities, this is a template, and the data comes from a data-rich city, which includes, in this case, 1 million plots that are already taking consideration. So it doesn't automatically scale, but we have already committed and gotten some major global work that we will cover a global heat layer in the next 3 years. So this is not automatically done, and this is why this kind of work is never fully funded to roll out, okay, here's flood there's another city, and we want to have the social vulnerable kind of indicator and census data also scale with that. But in our roadmap, and we're going to pull it up in a moment, we add 5 new cities in the US and 5 cities in Europe, and then get this whole global heat layer added at the end. Not everything, thank you, that's AV for you right there. So let's go over this, Elena, and then we'll maybe go back to live view if there's a question. So go ahead.
So last year, as I said before, we were awarded by the Architecture Lead project, and this is going to be wrapping up soon. And now we are here at the XR Prize, and Daniel, the next year.
So the Architecture League is another platform. They want to know what we've produced, and we are proud of what we've done in the MVP to actually make this real, because this kind of research doesn't see XR as the important thing to add here. So we really dedicated this to make this a gap closer. And so Architecture League is a platform. The app and Play Store are the disseminator for us, so we don't need necessarily workshops on QR codes anymore. We can leverage other kind of dissemination strategies through those 2 stores. Then trainer-trainer sessions, but also I should say that we are in October updating our new global heat layer at that point. One of our collaborators is in a PhD program at MIT looking at the indigenous territory of that region, so there will be an exciting what-if scenario that's very historically driven, but again, another project for integration, and then we go into the 24 that you can talk about, Elena, in terms of the additional cities.
Yes, we're in the future, we're planning to implement this 2-way data interaction where the user can upload their climate risk data to our platform, and other users will share this data. So this is like a 2-way interactions, and we will also add more city data like Berlin and other 5 US cities to our database.
That's a very important point, because we ran already a web platform for 5 years where we basically have logins for people to contribute, but we don't have that 2-way street built in for live observations. And when it comes to some of the extreme flood events, we could have had some live observations that would help us in research efforts and papers to actually tag and location-based photograph some of these efforts along the way. So using social media, that's the first time a 2-way street in XR would be possible for us through this kind of approach. And then it's basically lining up with the other projects in the lab we're committed to. Test City Berlin first in Europe, then 4 other in the US, then 4 other in Europe, and then a global heat layer that is produced with the models developed in each one of those cities. Any other questions? Yes, great. Sarah.
You mentioned something about a training session. Can
Yeah.
you explain a bit more about what that's about?
So it is quite clear that even if you are the We Act for Environmental Justice project or hold kind of workshops with the communities, you need already to understand which are the things that in a white label situation for the project that you're going into with the community, how you would use that. So for instance, in this example, we would train that they can actually show the nuisance flooding, the 1-foot flooding, and extreme future flooding, and have basically a training session that says, this is the data, this is where it came from, this is the certainty behind that data, so that they can tell the stories that they're not just downloading the latest data from the city without context, but the training session would basically provide that. And we also learned that not everyone wants to do this multi-hazard conversation in one go, right? Someone is more involved in the work about extreme heat. Again, in New York, it's a significant hazard, and there's major projects for cooling programs. We have a layer for the cooling spaces, so you can find the next cooling space. Another thing that updates every year, so we have a very moving target in terms of our data. So we separated this from the actual platform, and so we would train in the trainer sessions the platform and also make everybody aware this is our update frequency and our roadmap in terms of what's to come. And because it's separated design and content, we would be happy to make this part of the observation, the listening, and the co-design to actually add a layer and make this a white label situation for someone who wants to customize for education, for instance. Yes.
I'm really impressed by the amount of data you're using and how many layers of information there are. And I'm just wondering what your sort of approach is to the user journey to navigate all of those layers.
Right, so go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we have whole sections of introductions, which will walk the user through all the risks they might be encountering. And the two main user story that we are focusing right now is the heat and the flood storyline. The heat I was just showing right now, so maybe let's just go to the flood risk. And there's informations that the user might be interested in how to prevent getting those risks and how to understand more, educate themselves more. And here we can go to the actual tabletop. From remote, you can access those data. And we also have, for the flooding layer, we also have a live section, which you can see the flooding actually on the New York City street level. It was in the videos that we show, because we're not in New York right now. We can't really show it. And here are those different levels of flooding. And we also have a legend section to show how much the flooding will be. And Daniel, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, just also because it's a data question. What's the data? Here's the source. You can basically get to the source, understand the context. So the trainer question and the data question comes always, what is the context? How do I explain this? And here we really sat down and developed a story. That's sort of an XR mobile friendly version of getting you into a quite deep subject, excuse the pun. And therefore have some definitions, because we usually see this gap. Here's the open data portal. It's all for you there, but it's all expert released and there is no science communication around this. And here is engagement, one-off projects that don't scale. And we see this as a way for us to bridge that gap and also force us as a lab to bridge that gap, because we're also producing a lot of maps on a frequent basis that don't necessarily see the day of light as a storified version you can bring into an education context. So I hope that answers that a little bit.
Okay. Thank you so much to Danielle and Elena from Ocellus XR.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I would like to welcome Emilia Sanchez-Giacchetti and Leon Felipe Carrizosa to the stage to present Origin XR.
When I was a student in school, I was quite dissatisfied. I used to feel that big part of the knowledge that could truly enrich me as a human being was somewhere outside, beyond the school grills, quite literally. Even when I started the University of Art, a process that I loved, I still had that feeling like electricity. So remember one day, that feeling was so intense that I suddenly said to myself, I need to be honest. I will need to embark on a journey. I will need to embark on a journey around Latin America, and I will need to do it by earth. Walking, sailing, hitchhiking, whatever it takes, but no big jumps in the process and just no big plans. So with 19 years old, I started a journey that took me 3.5 years to complete, and I was walking, accompanying the geography of these lands, climbing into mountains, descending into valleys, listening to stories. Feeling the lark of air at 3,300 meters and the freshness of a sunrise in front of a lake, listening to stories. One night, after spending several months living in the Amazon, there was a massive rainstorm in the roof of the Maloca. I was sitting on the next of the fire, smelling the scent of the wet soil mixing with the fire, listening to these stories, these very important stories. And then suddenly I realized, like a lightning bolt, I'm sitting here, listening and learning in an experiential way, which means in a way I could hardly forget, from the most profound and relevant stories that I ever listened. These stories were teaching me, for example, through 3 generations, what 200 years of climate change had generated in the territory, were teaching me about how to acknowledge the big beauty of nature and the codependency between various beings and even various territories, were teaching me about animals, trees, and also about myself. So I believe that Origen came to life years later out of the profound desire of transferring these experiences. Hacking schools, universities, all the places where the knowledge is produced, where local strategies are developed, fought, and hopefully implemented, with these stories that should have always been an intrinsic part of the school curricula. So we designed Origen XR as a narrative universe composed of several pieces where the students or the users can navigate between them to address Amazonas, Andes, and Puna, addressing biodiversity and codependency from traditional knowledge and also from biological data that creates a circle in the narrative. So after delving into the whole XR universe, I want to express here the rhetorical questions that were the north when we created this. Is there a link between the way we depict the world to ourselves and the way we inhabit it? Could it be that by knowing nature in another way, we could also modify our way of relating to it?
So, Origen XR is a narrative universe that looks to provide an experiential learning journey, an exploration through multiple media formats in which the user can navigate those territories in its virtual form and discover stories, building a bigger narrative by connecting points, by connecting those stories. This story world is made up of 360 video documentary series, providing a realistic immersion into those territories. Also, we have augmented reality books, addressing biodiversity from biological facts, presenting information that help us to understand the concept of codependency. We have also the VR journey to address biodiversity too, but this time through stories and myth. And augmented reality pieces, where kinesthetic learning takes place where you are walking. The response of Origen was quite astonishing. We haven't even finished the project, it's not out yet, and we already have the support of many institutions, private, public institutions. We have the support of academia and government agencies from Argentina, should I say Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. But still we think that even when we have a good target of people to reach there in Colombia, the impact shouldn't end here. Because, mainly because in the process of creating Origen XR, we just saw, we saw how many of these species that we are presenting on these stories are just disappearing, are endangered.
Yes. So we co-designed an idea. I'm doing it short, but we have delivered there a document where you can further find the information of this. But we co-designed the idea of creating a network of seed reservoirs of the plants that are, in the case, the protagonists of Origen, but also that are the stories that the plants that protect many of the stories that also helps to protect the environment. So it's like a circular thing that we were super interested in delving. So we co-designed this idea, and we did the first experience in the Amazon in collaboration with Milka and the San Francisco community. And we found another purpose for this project, to generate IP aimed at reforestation and the protection of giant trees in the Amazon rainforest. For example, one of our main protagonists in the VR journey is the Chihuahuaco tree. The Chihuahuaco tree is a majestic tree that grows in the Amazon rainforest, can live for more than 1,000 years, and is one of the best carbon accumulators in the forest. He also carries out the very important task of pumping water from the subsoil and carrying 70 meters tall and sending the water in the form of humidity and connecting the Amazon with the Andes from the flying rivers that carry out water to them. There are many traditional tales that address the Chihuahuaco from this as a protector of these environments. But unfortunately, worldwide, this tree is known not because of this, but because of its wood. Its wood is highly demanded for parquet floorings, and people know through that. So all the efforts to help protect the industry are little, and we thought of creating a lot of pieces like these T-shirts or other pieces we are going to create for addressing this impact of protecting the trees.
Sure.
But, well, sorry, I get a little bit nervous sometimes when
Should we take a look
speaking.
at the
Yes,
video?
but so the main piece that we have in Origen XR is the VR journey, where we explore the meaningful interactions in a continuous journey. So we have created for the first chapter a non-Euclidean world, pushing a little bit forward the limits of the device. We are going to embark on a journey of crossing more than 40 portals in a space of 2 by 2 meters. You are going to walk around into this non-Euclidean world. Also, it's played with hand tracking, so the meaningful interactions can be better experienced and embodied. And Origen is currently trilingual, but as more chapters are added, will become even more diverse. So we asked for turn off the lights because it's a nighttime journey through the Amazons. It's a shortcut of the 25 minutes experience.
Okay, let's see.
Escucha la naturaleza, síguela.
virtual experience translates into real-world impact and how you plan to measure that?
Well, we believe that stories itself and this type of information, this type of narratives arriving to these crucial places as schools, tech centers, and governmental institutions, we have designed a super artisanal, very well thought journey that we are going to deliver these experiences. Already has an impact in itself, but also we close the circle with this reseedling initiative and the support of organizations that take care of these trees, as the Chihuahuaco and other species that are disappearing. We plan that the IP generated by Origen in Latin America, we are going to reach as many places as we can, but outside we can license it, and also that big part of the income generated will go to their also other events that we are thinking to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, big thank you.
Thank you.
The Immersion Project, please step back to get mic'd up and do a final check NAV as we welcome Jeff Kirby to the stage to present Qikiqtarjuq.
Everybody ready for this? Let's get started. All right, so I'm Jeff Kirby. I'm an ecologist and a photographer, and I've been working in the Arctic doing both of these things for about 10 years on and off right now. And today I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you to Qikiqtarjuq. And I'm taking you with a diverse team of people that have been working on this project. We have educators, researchers, park rangers from this territorial park, Northern Community Outreach officers, and a virtual reality content producer. So before we get there, though, I want to set a couple of facts out there. I do a lot of talks where I just give out facts. So the Arctic, it's warming faster than anywhere else in the world, 4 times faster. And this has huge implications for a region that is essentially a frozen place. If you warm it up, things start changing. It's also home to more than 1/3 of all of the soil organic carbon in the world. And this is a huge source of potential greenhouse gases if this organic matter thaws and then becomes available to microbes and they can digest it and send it up into the atmosphere. And so these are really important things that in about 2 weeks from now, you're not going to remember because I just gave you a bunch of facts. And we're kind of inundated with these things. And this same happens to me too. It goes in one ear and out the other. But when you go to a place, you really remember it in a different way. And so I had that opportunity when I joined Isla Meyer-Smith, a plant ecologist, in 2016 to go to Qikiqtarjuq. And this is what the island looks like. And this is what the island looks like if you have a drone. It's basically a big lump of permafrost that's sitting out there, and that's kind of this soil organic carbon with a really thin skin of green on top of it. So if you were to stand on the tundra and you just look down at your feet, you'd see something like this in the middle of the summer. A very green kind of dwarf shrub kind of environment. But if you're standing in just the right place, you'd realize that you're kind of on top of something lurking beneath you. We have hundreds of years, thousands of years, or tens of thousands of years of organic carbon that's locked up in the ice and that is being liberated from that kind of frozen soil. And this is one of the places in the world where you can really stand in a place and feel this in a way more than if I just show you a map with some figures on it. And so, great, this made a big impression on me. I'm never going to forget it, and it's kind of shaped the way that I talk and feel about these places. This is a big threat that resonates. But this is a place that's not devoid of people either. People have been using this island for over 1,000 years. The Inuvialuit have been going here for hunting and trapping. These buildings are from kind of the whaling era, where there's also some explorers trying to figure out the Northwest Passage. And all of this heritage is threatened right now. Again, you can go up there yourself. This is from last summer. And you don't build buildings in the middle of an ocean. This is something that's happening now, and it's wiping out not just these buildings, but these archaeological sites that are important to the cultural heritage of the Inuvialuit. And so, yeah, I'm an ecologist. I study how landscapes change. Here's a drone map I made of that big thaw slump that you saw previously. There's the size of a soccer field. So this is big. You get that sense of scale. And when you're standing there, you get it. But this is more just an infographic. And this kind of relates to what I'm getting across. This is the Chief Park, Senior Park Ranger at Qeqertarq, Richard, who's really pointing out the empathy gap. When you're not there, you don't get it. But this is something that we need because these problems are being caused by stuff that's happening far away from the island. But it's also an accessibility gap. Even for people that live in these northern communities, it's extremely expensive and rare for them to be able to go to this culturally important place. So anything that can demonstrate the kind of massive impacts that are happening on this island in a way that's safe, accessible, and engaging is welcome. So we took our drone data, all of our data, which we've been sitting on and writing scientific papers about for many years, and realized that we had a 3D-ready environment and a bunch of people that had spent decades working in this place with important narratives to tell. So we figured we could just bring everybody to the island, and we can talk about all these different factors that are happening. So there's Richard and Isla, who are the two main voices. And so this is all about accessibility. I'll go into some of the details of how to access Qeqertarq later, but if you just pop that QR code onto your phone, you should be able to travel around and see the island. But you can also do this in a headset. So I'm going to try to switch over to that now. All right, so this is available just with WebXR. And we should be able to hear something right now.
Welcome to Qeqertarq. My name is Rich Gordon. I'm the Senior Park Ranger, and I've been with the park for the last 25 years. Qeqertarq is one of those places where reality of climate change kicks in because you're witnessing it for yourself.
What does it mean to witness climate change? This tundra landscape feels timeless. But like many other places in the Arctic, Qeqertarq is rapidly warming. I'm Isla Myers-Smith, an Arctic ecologist who's worked alongside Richard for over a decade. I remember standing on this very spot a few years ago. But today the place where you're standing no longer exists. Take a look behind you to get a sense of how much land can thaw away in just a couple of years. Down here in the slump, you can hear the ground disappearing. Those plops and cracks are the sounds of permafrost thaw.
All right, we'll pause it there. You can spend more time in this space with that link.
To get a sense of how large these changes are, we need a bird's eye view.
Do I have to do something? Maybe I'll just hit the forward button. Yeah, perfect. All right, we've created a landscape or a series of landscapes and scientific narratives that feature different voices that kind of have a realistic feel to them. On the top, you have the photos. On the bottom, you have the VR environment. So this is starting with drone data, bringing in a bit of LiDAR from another group that's working up there, and then animating on top of that. So that's a great way to make something feel realistic. But it also gives us the power to move through time and to show different projections of past and future, whether that relates to carbon that's happening on the surface. So we have some plants right here that you can see in past and future versions. We can do the same with heritage as well. So these are Inuvialuit buildings that are no longer there. Finally, we can control the timing of events. If you want to understand what it feels like to experience one of these flooding events while you're there, we can trigger that. And so we take all of you through this with the experiences of either Isla or Richard. And we do this starting from an urge to do something with our data. understanding some of the failings of translating the science to the bigger picture, but also making sure that we're embedded in the northern community that we're working in. This is a project that has been going on for well over a decade, and it's critical that we have that as a core component of it. And so we've been working with kind of the outreach communicator, Annika Trimble, who is working in Inuvik, and this has been a very popular hands-on activity for people in that region, hitting hundreds of people. And this is just kind of the demo version. So it's also an opportunity for us to get feedback and incorporate changes. This summer, we're installing this in the park office to help people decide whether or not to make the journey to the island. We're bringing it to community meetings for further feedback. We have school visits planned in Aklavik, Inuvik, and Tuktoyaktuk to hit hundreds of students. And this is part not of a one-year plan, but of the next 8 years of research here. So there'll be a lot of recurring engagement. But I guess it's only really useful to do something if it works. So we try to evaluate how it works in different ways. And this, again, is a learning process that we're getting better and better at. We wanted to ask the question, what does climate change smell like? So we had a master's student kind of run this project where we had a perfume maker create the smell of permafrost thaw. And then we could take people through this environment. The version that we did, the whole smell thing was kind of inconclusive, but some of the other elements that we got out of it that Mass was leading there's really measurable feelings of connectedness, changes in attitude that changes with the age of the participant, and persistent raising of awareness. So we're learning how to measure this and then bring that back to the northern communities. And then ultimately it's about scaling it. So this is something that has been a decision we made from day one. We don't want to have something that is overly complex, that makes you download an app, that you need training on. You just type in a web address and you're immediately there and you're surrounded. This happens, it's designed for 3G Wi-Fi speeds or lower, and the server capacity is very, very low because these are all static assets. As we start scaling this up, we have connections with a variety of different groups. The two funders of this project so far have been Meridian Treehouse and National Geographic Society. And so we have really big reach with Nat Geo. I'm a photographer for them, and I have access to their main Instagram channels. There's 100 million plus people right there we can put messaging out to. And then with Meridian Treehouse, we have really excellent opportunities to develop educational outlets in public school districts or kind of really target the right people. We've shown this to folks high up in NASA. They're very excited. We have plans to present at the EU in relation to some very large scientific research projects that are ongoing with EU funding, and really just make the most of our networks. So we have really strong networks. We're developing ways of measuring this, and we have a long-term commitment to these communities. So in sum, we're really not trying to solve the climate change problem from a scientific nuts and bolts part, but it's like, how can we really bring more empathy, accessibility, and doing so in a safe way? You can't really get close to some of these things in real life. And we have multiple ways of doing that. So I would love any questions that you might have about this.
After, what would you ideally like to see the results of the project in the next 12, 24, 36 months?
I would love to get additional feedback from the community that kind of either resonates with this is something that really means something to us. We have had one-off discussions with many people, but doing so in more of a collective sense, I think would be very impactful and meaningful for people that spent parts of their childhood on this island and haven't been back in 50 years. So to generate those conversations, and then to have those first conversations with youth in that region, again, that can't access their own heritage. So that's kind of going to happen one way or another. If we do it well, great. If we do it poorly, we'll make it better. That's the short term. While this is happening, we're learning the tools and kind of processes to do this beyond the community and really take it to other places. We're doing one-off events now, but there's more to be done in the bigger picture.
I'm going to take it. Ha. Thank you very much for this. I was really excited to see the permafrost smell and what does climate change smell like.
The headset stinks like permafrost because it's hard to clean it off. So we can smell that later too.
I'm going to look forward to that during the break, yes. I'm curious if you have spoken, you mentioned, I saw NASA there, and
yeah.
I'm wondering if you've talked to like ESA and what is it, basically the European version of NOAA. They've all got really large like digital twin efforts underway now that are just starting, that are getting funded, and I think there's a lot that's going on the technology side, but not as much on what you have here around the storytelling and the empathy and accessibility. So have you worked yet much with any of the other big like IPCC agencies?
Yeah, so Isla is an author in the IPCC. She wrote a section of that. We have connections through all of those kind of science things, and we've kind of learned that they're happening in parallel. There wasn't a lot of good crosstalk. So we're coming into it with a little bit more mature stage than a lot of other groups. And we're sharing that knowledge with other science groups too, kind of helping build the vocabulary and the toolkits. So in terms of speaking to the leadership of that, we've had one-off conversations with people higher up in NASA, and they're like, oh, great, this is the type of thing that we're looking for. How can we make this happen more? And so we're having those discussions right now. And then in terms of policy events, we're speaking with people that go to, say, the World Economic Forum in Davos, to the COP, to IPCC conferences, how we can target something using these assets specifically for a policymaker's head. Give them 3 minutes rather than showing them a graph and hopefully make that impact.
Okay, a big thanks to Jeff from Kikikara. Okay, one more to go before the break. I'd like to welcome to the stage Austin Camille from the Immersion Project.
All right, thank you guys so much for being here. This is truly such a pleasure. I would like to begin by introducing you, first and foremost, to my incredible teammates. Here we are, my incredible teammates, who I really wish could be here this evening. They're all incredible public speakers, of course. The Immersion Project is a multidisciplinary team made up of myself, Austin Camille, Dr. Eric Cordes, Christine Lee, and Rebecca Rutstein. Christine and Rebecca are both established, incredible visual artists who are really committed to the intersection of art and science. For example, Christine has worked on biomimicry projects under grants funded by NASA, and Rebecca currently has a solo show up at the National Academy of Sciences in DC. Our lead scientist, Eric, has been researching deep water corals for over 20 years now. And he is also currently among the pool of experts for the ongoing UN World Ocean Assessment. So I am in really, really incredible company with this group here. As for myself, I am a public artist. I come from a family of women who love gardening. I have a father who does volumetric video production, a sister who does environmental education on sailboats. I'm somewhere in the middle of all of that. Over the last couple of years, especially, I've been working on public art projects supported by the Nature Conservancy, by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the New York Water Institute, really honing in on environmentally focused public art projects where the inclusion of AR is intended as a storytelling extension of the physical work itself. I feel like I should also mention our team includes all of the lab techs in Philadelphia who are cleaning the coral tanks. It includes assistant fabricators in California working with biomaterials, 3D animation artists in Houston, tech partners like Zapper in London. So while with our work, we're really honing in on a single location, the bottom of the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, The project is incredibly collaborative in nature and global in scale. So the Cortez Laboratory at Temple University is currently in the midst of a long-term research project concerning the mesophotic and deep benthic communities, coral communities of the Gulf of Mexico. So these are vast and complex ecosystems on the ocean floor. They're really the foundation of the Gulf of Mexico food webs, all the way on up to us, and potentially a huge long-term carbon sink, which is one of the things that the Cortez Laboratory is in the midst of researching right now. So more than 770 square miles of this deep sea habitat was injured by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Eric and his team have been researching and preparing to restore this area since the spill in 2010, focusing specifically on the cold water coral species called Lophelia pertusa. This species is what Eric likes to call the super coral, who will be able to both repopulate this ecosystem, but also withstand future ocean acidification, which is a huge part of the longevity of this research project. Their goal is essentially to restore abundance and biomass for the injured species and to provide a continuum of healthy habitats from the coast to deep offshore. So this project, the Immersion Project, represents the point at which all of this research moves into a public phase. So I was going to demonstrate for you the very, very small prototype that I brought with me. Fits in my carry-on bag there, a little piece of coral. But we couldn't mirror. So this is just a screen recording capture that you can watch, but you can also access it on your phone with the QR code. It's all on WebAR. So essentially, the Immersion Project is the outreach component of this ongoing research. Otherwise, the work exists in a lab, with a scientific research paper that only scientists will read, and then it will be deployed to the deep ocean, and absolutely no one will know about it except for a very small handful of people. The grant funding for the research exists separately, which is why I'm here applying for this award. To my mind, this work is too important, it's too impactful to take place without something that the public can experience. So imagine if you can, this little 3D printed coral and very short AR piece is really just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to be doing. So imagine that little piece of coral, but at a much larger than life-size scale. It will be, you're entering into a room of larger than life-size modular mounded Lophelia coral. And there'll be woven skins wrapped around them that will act as targets for the AR. I'll be hand painting all of the AR assets and then working with a 3D animator to then translate those into 3D objects and 3D animations. So the idea is that someone walking into this exhibition space will be able to see both what the reef looks like now and then what it will look like as the restoration work is taking place and as the ecosystem is healing. We have been, I've lost my place. Yes, the use of AR for this project, to my mind, is really important as the XR component for a couple different reasons. I think AR is really good at facilitating human interaction and conversation in a space when it's happening. I've seen that happen with some of my past projects. But it also means that people are connecting with the physical corals in front of them as well. Which is then, connecting them to the actual restoration work that will be taking place. So we've been working with the AR platform Zapper, and it's a web AR platform. They've been really incredible to work with as we're trying out larger models and more advanced tracking as well to create a really seamless end user experience. So in terms of outreach and scale of engagement, there's two different scales we're going to be working at here. So it will be an expansive art and AR exhibition that will travel between museums, science museums, art museums, aquariums. We have a couple different venues that we've been in negotiations with already for these larger scale exhibitions. And it will also be a much smaller, singular coral scale mobile museum. And this one is incredibly important to me. This will be traveling between libraries, community centers, community colleges, schools all up and down the Gulf Coast. To me, it's really important to be working on these two different scales. The funding and visibility that's afforded by these larger institutions will essentially enable this wider reach of the work into the communities who were most affected by the oil spill and then will be most affected by the restoration work that's taking place. In regards to climate and social impact, one of the things that Eric really wanted me to make sure to express to y'all is that we're in really new territory here when it comes to this type and scale of restoration work in the Gulf of, in deep ocean environments. It just simply hasn't been done yet, despite the fact that there are, I think, twice as many deep sea corals. It covers twice as much surface area as shallow water corals. It's really hard to get to. And so the research is still really young. So, you know, one of the really, even though I can't give you a number necessarily for how much carbon will be sequestered by this work, I can tell you that that is one of the things that will be actively monitored through this research and could potentially be a huge, like a significant contribution to scientific knowledge. So what I can tell you, ultimately, we will be restoring, reconnecting a broad swath of the 770 square miles that were affected, which means that over 2,000 different species, different types of species who rely on Lophelia will be able to thrive again. And then Lophelia itself participates in planet-scale climate regulation and carbon cycling. So that is a plus. And also, essentially, once this work is taking place, you know, then we'll have a foundation to do more of this work as needed in other places. Hopefully we don't need to, but if we do, we have that knowledge. There's a number of ways that we can measure our social impact, you know, in terms of number of AR engagements, number of folks going to these museums, the different communities that we're working with. Outside of the quantitative impact, I'm really interested in the qualitative impact from especially a lot of these smaller engagements. You know, how many, or what kinds of conversations are taking place, what kinds of programming is coming out of this work, and what kind of climate action might be taking place within these communities. So essentially, by creating an experience that combines, you know, these physical, real-world objects with augmented reality, with tangible acts of restoration, we're trying to set up moments of conversation and connectivity and care, and hopefully action. So I'm going to leave you with a quote because I love a good quote, and this one feels really, really relevant. Just came across it the other day. The European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans, and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius, he wrote, "There will be no climate neutrality without restored ecosystems. If we want to achieve our climate goals, there's no magic solution. We need nature." And to my mind, that really gets to the heart of our project. Essentially, ecosystem restoration fights climate change on a fundamental level by caring for the species that we're still lucky enough to have. So thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Do you have an external evaluator to assess the impact of the museum experiences, or is that something you plan to measure on your own?
That's a really good question. I think my guess is a lot of the institutions are being identified in tandem with the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund, and so they're going to be a part, my guess is they'll be a part of that evaluation process too, because, you know, their name is on this as well. I think, so far as I know, NOAA is also involved too, and so I think, you know, there will be other external evaluators, yeah, kind of keeping tabs on all of that and seeing how many people are engaging with this work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really interesting project.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the timeline?
Yeah, so we have actually an exhibition coming up this November. It's kind of like our very first test exhibition, which we're doing on like, it's so shoestring, but it's going to be just like a singular, a singular large coral form with AR work. So that is kind of us beginning to test the waters, but some of the institutions who we've been talking to, they would like to see exhibitions, full exhibitions, within by the end of next year. So we're hoping to get all of that moving. We're starting to work on the exhibition design and all of that hopefully by the end of this summer. But at the moment, the lab is in the process of testing. They're testing the materials for the corals as well. So they've got a bunch of different coral tanks, and they're using polylactic acid materials. So there's all the research timeline and the exhibition timeline are really interesting to try to weave together.
What is the take-home story you want the people who exhibit, that you have at the exhibit, what do you want them to have inside of them that they leave from the exhibit?
I like that question. I think there's a couple different things. I think one of the main things is that the kind of work that we're doing as a group, we're just ordinary people who are really, really passionate about something, and all of our brains work totally differently, and we got together and came up with this project. And I think that sensation of collaboration, and it takes people from all different walks of life and from all different perspectives coming together to create change. I think we really want that to be a huge part of the takeaway. Whether or not someone walking into the exhibition is like, oh, now I want to go be a marine scientist, or I really care about the ocean. It's more like, oh no, all of these people are working together to try to create something different. I could do that too. I could take my interest and find someone doing something that I care about and make a change. That feels really important to me.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for at the moment.
Beautiful.
So thank you to Austin.
Thank you.
And that takes us to our break. So thank you everybody for your time and attention for this first half. So with that, welcome back from the break, and I would like to welcome to the stage Figmin XR. That is Javier Davalos, Ewan Rose, and Astra Svetlakova.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Javier Davalos. I'm the programmer and designer of Figmin XR, which is basically an augmented reality application that lets people easily create, collect, and play with digital twins. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story. About 7 years ago, I quit my job to dedicate myself to the research of this technology. At the time, I knew it was going to be big, but I didn't quite know what it was for, but I intended to find out. So at some point in this journey, I recall clearly I had made this little tiny RC airplane that was virtual, and I was flying it inside my house with my HoloLens 1, and I realized, wait a minute, this virtual plane is not only as good as the real ones that I have, it's better, because a real RC plane cannot be flown indoors. And then it dawned on me, wow, okay, AR is a green technology. Why? Well, if this virtual plane is better than the real one, then we don't have to make it. And then the damage that the styrofoam, electronics, battery that it uses can be prevented. So I was super excited. I go tell my friends, hey, look, AR is green. And they gave me some really weird looks, cuckoo. And at that time, I realized that this is not something you can tell people. This is something people need to experience themselves, and then it will dawn on them. So, and that's how Figmin XR came to be. It's basically an app that empowers people, just average people, not experts, to discover the use of augmented reality and also its benefits. So, my friend Ewan Rose now is going to show you all about it.
Hi, my name is Ewan. I'm the art director. I can still keep talking, it's fine. And I wanted to thank you all very much again for giving us the opportunity to be up here on stage right now. because getting to share about this is something that is very close to my heart. We want Figment to be a compassionate solution to the problem of how, as humans, we all like stuff, but the stuff we create pollutes the environment due to its creation, its transport, and its disposal. The material world that we all live in isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but XR is giving us the technology to create digital twins, which are zero-use digital versions of real objects that are as good as, if not better than, their physical counterparts. For example, say I wanted to throw a party for all of you here at AWE tonight, but I didn't have any party supplies. Instead of going out to the store to buy a bunch of cheap plastics, I could simply go to the Discover panel and search for some animated banners to put right here. And then I'll take another one, put it over here, make that big, watch out for your head. And then another one right over your heads. Now, it's looking a little bit more festive in here already, but what is a good party without balloons? To get some, we could go over here to 3D models and search for them by just typing in balloon. And I'll look through these and pick one that I like. I'm going to use this one, created by an artist named One Catalog. And right now, these are not as fun as real balloons, but with a couple quick inputs, we can give them realistic physics. And I can pick these up and float these on over to you guys over there. Now that the judges are distracted by balloons, we can go over to the Figment tab and look at things that other users have created and published to our platform. So I'm going to go over here while this is loading, and we are going to find a couple glow sticks. So I'm going to take this one, give that to you. Green one, I'm going to give that to you. An orange one over here. I should have asked you all your favorite colors, but you get what glow stick you get. Over here, there are a couple sparklers. I'm going to load these in. There's a lot of you, so I want to make sure that all of you get something. So we'll do this, and one more for you. And then finally, we will do a disco ball above all of your heads, because why not? And you all look like you're having a little bit too much fun over there by yourselves, so I want to make something that we can all play together. So if I go over here to my web links, I can pull in an image that I imported earlier, because we could play Pin the Tail on the Donkey. I'm going to put this just over here, but this still leaves us with the problem of needing a tail for our donkey. But the beauty of Figment is that not only can you just bring in all of this stuff from almost anywhere, you can actually create things within the app itself. If I go over here to New Object, I can use 3D brushes to very quickly create a tail for our donkey, a little bit of fluff, and lastly, a pin to go in it. And now we have an entire interactive party that was quick, easy, free, and most importantly, has a negligible carbon footprint. To talk data a little bit, for those of you that think better with numbers, we have this over here. We can use latex balloons as an example. In California alone, we buy an estimated 45 to 50 million balloons every year, and every single one of them produces 13.9 grams of CO2 equivalent. That's greenhouse gases. If we replaced just 10% of these balloons with virtual versions, that would save an estimated 69 tons of CO2 equivalent from ever making it into our atmosphere. Not to mention the benefits of all the latex that wouldn't end up in our oceans and our waterways. And obviously, that's just balloons. Imagine what else we could create as this technology improves in the future. Imagine how much we could continue to reduce of our waste. And imagine how much stuff we don't actually need to buy, like confetti. When talking about climate change, I think it's important to mention the fact that we're not just fighting climate change anymore, we're fighting climate despair. So many of us are already all too aware of the fact that there is massive ecological devastation happening across the planet. But we feel powerless to do anything about the greed that is fueling it. And it's sad to say, but I think we're getting past the point of needing more education about climate change. What we need most right now are solutions. But those solutions have to actively improve people's lives, make them a little bit more fun, make them easier, in order to get people to actually use them, and for any of us to see mass societal change that we need to actually help this. And hopefully, that's where Figment comes in. And with that, I'll give the floor back to Javier.
So that's Figment XR. It's pretty cool, right? I'm pretty proud of it. Okay, so Figment XR. I forgot my script. I'm a little bit too emotional. So Figment XR, yes, it's great. It's available on all augmented reality headsets. HoloLens, Magic Leap 1 and 2, HTC Vive XR, Quest Pro, Snapdragon Spaces. And hundreds of people use it every day. I know the 100 daily active users doesn't sound like much, but in the realm of augmented reality glasses, that is a lot, and that makes us one of the most popular apps. We are humble indie developers, and we are driven by passion and a sense of purpose. Through the years, the people in power, as in all of the augmented reality headset manufacturers, have rallied in our support. And that's what's kept us going. And today, that power lies on you. With your support, not only will you provide funds for us to keep going, but most importantly, you will allow our voice to be heard. Thank you.
Have you thought about your own carbon footprint and how you might manage this through renewable energy in data centers?
So the carbon footprint of the devices themselves. So I don't know.
No, actually not the devices. Those wouldn't be necessarily part of your footprint, or at least not all of it would be part of your footprint. But for example, the use phase of people using the app.
The carbon footprint of people using the app, as in like the electricity they use?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And
okay. So they're very low power devices, about as much or maybe a little bit more than a cell phone. So you know, we were in Burning Man locally in Oregon, and we were charging them with solar, with like a 65-watt solar panel, and it would charge in 2.5 hours. So. Yeah, the carbon footprint of, I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm humbly just a developer. And so that, is a dream that I have, that in the future, and I just want to share it. I can't give you the numbers that perhaps you need, but I don't think that it uses a lot.
So the program's great. It obviously has a lot of potential commercial opportunities. How do you plan to balance the commercial needs for the platform, for everything that it can do in terms of creation versus promoting the sustainability options that can be used with it?
Thank you. That's a good question. I feel like at this point in history of augmented reality glasses, like the focus needs to be in finding what they're for, how they're fun, and inspiring people. So that's our goal at the moment. Is we offer the app free in half of the platforms. I do believe. I mean, I put everything I have on this. I do believe we're going to have commercial success, but at the moment, our focus is in letting people discover this technology and making them understand that it can be good not just for their productivity, but also the environment.
I just want to say thank you for that demo. And very rarely in the field of climate change solutions do we get to integrate joy and play. So I appreciate that. And my question is about scalability. So can you give an idea of just how many users might have this experience with Figmin, and maybe even how many owners of these particular headsets exist now, and how do you see that changing?
I'll share you our analytics. I haven't done it before. We have thousands of users that have either bought or used the app. But out of those thousands, we have hundreds that use it every day. So I don't know, maybe I'm a dreamer, but I feel like when these glasses are more accessible, that number will grow as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So have you thought about, this isn't a question, this is just sort of, it seems to me back to the climate change motif that we're looking for today, that this would be a marvelous opportunity for you to use this application to actually teach some of the things about sustaining a green environment in your home, for example, and what you could do in your home by growing virtual plants that would scrub the environment in your home, especially in the wintertime. What the care and feeding of the plants in your home, animals that may be in your home. All of these kinds of things that would help, especially children, learn the principles behind and sustaining a green environment within the home. What happens with the thermostat? You have a thermostat up high in terms of what it does in terms of the pollution outside the window. So to make connections that the acts that you're doing actually impact the environment. It's not just the fact that you're having a virtual party, that you're not buying things. You actually now are seeing cause and effect of when you do a certain thing, what is the impact of that from a green standpoint, CO2 generation standpoint?
Definitely. At some point, I would like to, as this app keeps growing and every year it gets better and better. At some point, I would like to have some kind of Internet of Things integration, and then we could do things like that. You turn a dial, and you see an effect. So it's a wonderful idea. Thank you.
Okay, big thank you to Javier, Ewan, and the whole Figmin. And then please welcome to the stage Kim Griffender, Bryson Rudolph, and Kumani Riley to present Mangrove City.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. This is Mangrove City. It was a project created by faculty and students at the University of Miami. So Mangrove City is a VR experience designed for middle school students to explore the crucial role of mangrove forests in protecting the coastal communities and mitigating climate change. We aim to empower teachers and provide students with a sense of hope and belief that they will make a difference. I'm going to have now Kumani give you a demo in the beginning, and then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about what we're going to be seeing here.
Go ahead and grab the top and center of your paddle. Now dip the paddle in the water and drag to move forward. Keep paddling to explore a mangrove. Perfect. Between land and sea exists a mysteriously interconnected world. A world full of secrets that help us learn about living with rising tides. Seemingly unexplored by most, this ancient forest is one of the world's most important and productive ecosystems. These forests provide a variety of services for our Earth, aiding in the survival of plants, wildlife, and humans. From meandering roots beneath the calm waters to the mysteries that lie deep within the foliage, mangroves have evolved unique adaptations essential to combat future environmental changes and act as a shield to keep us safe. This is Mangrove City, where humans coexist harmoniously within this ancient world.
We have mini games which are fun games which students can learn more about the benefits of mangroves. Coming up first is our coastal erosion station.
By protecting mangrove forests, we can safeguard against the devastating effects of coastal erosion and maintain a healthy and productive coastal environment. Without mangroves, the waves wash up on the shore and wash away the soil. Grab a mangrove to plant it in the shallow area in front of the seashore and watch how this impacts coastal erosion on the seaside.
Ooh, yeah, I won. I'm a mangrove specialist. Also, you can see that the waves are no longer there as much. I'm going to return to the paddleboard. Okay, now we're approaching a 360 video, which was made to teach the students about underwater mangroves. Okay, look at the cute fish over there.
Mangroves provide an ideal habitat for fish throughout their life cycle, including their juvenile stage, and are home to a great variety of fish species, some of which have local socioeconomic
As you can see, this is
importance.
very beautiful, but we're going to head back to save some time.
Grunts.
All right. Coming up next is another one of our stations. This one is called birding stations. Here, students will be able to identify different bird songs and hear a fun fact about them after matching it correctly. So. Whoops.
Try again.
I got it wrong.
Good job. It's a match. Do you know that male? Good job. It's a match. Do you know that double-crested? Good job. It's a match.
Yeah, I won. So after matching each bird correctly, you would hear a fun fact. I've muted it for the purposes of this demo. But when students are playing this game, they will be required to listen to the fun facts. So I've probably played this a million times now, so I'm pretty used to it. Okay. All right. So I'm approaching another one of our stations. We're going to have about 12 of these in our full experience. The one here is called fish identification. This is to teach students about the relationship between mangroves and reef. We have arrived at Mangrove City. I have my secret cheat here to speed up. Ooh. All right. As I look around, I'm able to see different buildings, such as the lily pad houses, which were created like lily pads, and they rise and fall with the changes in tides. Also, you can see eco skyscrapers, which were inspired by mangroves. All right, I'm gonna head over to the eco skyscrapers. At this station, you're able to either explore rooftop power plants or aquaponic farms. As you can see, our rooftop power plant is currently closed for renovations, but our aquaponic farm is open. So let's explore that. Ooh. As students look around, they're able to learn about aquaponic farms and thus explore it in general. They're also able to see a beautiful view of the mangroves all around. All right, I'm going to head back now. All right, this was our last station for this demo, and I'd like to thank you all for coming on this tour to Mangrove City with me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Kumani. So why did we pick mangroves? If we, apart from the fact that we come from Miami and we have mangroves and we're underutilizing them to protect us, if we take the top 10 cities in the world that have mangrove ecosystems, we're talking about a total population of 130 million. There are 5.2 million hectares with areas found across the 6 continents that have mangroves. This is a solution that we can do something about right now. So here's some learning outcomes that we hope students get out of Mangrove City. Awareness of climate change, knowledge of mangrove ecosystems, environmental stewardship, problem solving and critical thinking, empathy and connection to nature, and most of all, we want them to think differently about mangroves. We want them to take action, think about their future careers, and things that they can do about it as they move forward in their academic careers. Our adaptation strategy is very simple. We want to empower teachers. Mangrove City was built with teachers in mind, with a curriculum that's aligned from the beginning to the next generation science standards, which they're already using in classrooms across multiple states. It's free to use. It's got free downloadable class materials, which include editable lesson plans, discussion guides, and assessment templates. Word of mouth works really well with teachers. So we will present environmental and teacher conferences. We will leverage some data from some previous projects that we had. I worked on Swampscapes in 2018. We have about 250 registered teachers that have already used Swampscapes with over 6,000 students. And we're going to continue working with school districts and teachers. And we hope to have a museum version. We talked to the Miami Science Museum. They're excited about this. We already have a prototype for it as well. So here's some of our sample teaching materials. This is being generated by Ren Rendy. They're they're an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska. And she's helping us put all of this together, and she'll be helping us with the assessment. So we have lesson procedures that includes an introduction to VR and exploration, an assessment, extensions, reflection, and here are some samples of the editable slides that we're going to give to teachers to be able to use in the classroom. All right, how are we going to measure impact? First of all, we have a really clearly defined objective. We aim to evaluate the effectiveness of Mangrove City in improving student engagement and confidence towards the future by fostering a sense of stewardship towards the environment. Again, this is being led by Ren Rendy, who is an assistant professor of STEM and technology education at the University of Nebraska. We're also working with researchers at the University of Miami and University of Missouri. We're going to be collecting qualitative and quantitative data using proven research methods, and we're going to be assessing it in long-term impact. This is really what interests us, is how long does a VR experience stay with someone? And we're going to do long-term follow-ups, and we want to know how it influenced their educational paths, career choices, and personal actions related to environment conservation. We are ready with 5 schools ready to participate. This is going to be a hybrid pilot test, first for collecting data and testing our own methods, but it's also going to be used as UX and usability tests to do it. We're obviously going to have peer-reviewed publications to move the needle on VR education. And one of the things we really want to do, because we feel like we have something important, is a field guide and toolkit for VR creators who want their projects to be used in classrooms. So how will the funds be used? We're going to continue to polish and develop our product. We're going to fund the research. We want to buy headsets for classroom interventions to collect the data. We want to pay stipends and travel for teachers to go to conferences and talk about this. This is something that they asked us to do with Swampscapes, and we didn't have the money for it, but teachers are really the best advocates for our products. We want to deploy an exhibition for museums. We want to translate the app into Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Malay, Spanish, Portuguese, and Thai, which covers approximately 1.9 billion people. We already have contacts in Brazil and India that we want to work with. Thank you. So, questions?
With Swampscapes, I think it was called, how did you get the students into the experience? Did you purchase headsets for them, or did the classrooms already have them?
So the classrooms already had them. We had a tiny budget for Swampscapes. We did a few pilots. just to more of a usability test in classrooms rather than an actual research study with it. So we just gave it away. We had a website. Teachers had to register, so that's how we kept track of how many teachers, and that's how we collected our mailing list. But that's really what we did. There was no study behind Swampscapes.
Have you thought about, is there a priority on where you deploy this more in coastal areas than inland in terms of educating students?
So Nebraska is the state in the United States that's furthest from any coastline. But believe it or not, with Swampscapes, we had an entire school district adopt it. And that's how we got in touch with them, and that's how everything started. Our connection with Nebraska started. But they are interested. We want to also see if there's a difference between students who live in coastal areas and who don't live in coastal areas. And also, mangroves are just an ecosystem. The rules that we're going to be teaching them about this ecosystem could be applied to any other ecosystem as well.
Thank you for that great tour through the mangroves.
You're welcome.
My question is, in a classroom setting or even an informal learning space, would you have a learner go in one at a time? Would you be able to have multiple learners in multiple headsets? Is there a potential for seeing other students in the experience as well?
So when we did Swampscapes, we had 80 students in 4 classes. We spent the whole day at the middle school, Carver Middle School in Miami, and we only had 6 headsets. And there were the Oculus GoPro, the Oculus Go's, and we only had 6. So what we did is we had the classroom materials, the students working on the classroom materials, whilst we took 6 at a time out to experience the project. We think that Swampscapes was about 12 minutes. We're hoping this is going to be about 15 minutes as well. So it fits into a 45-minute session.
Just to follow up on Erica's question, would you imagine it as a social VR experience, or was Swampscapes social VR, or it's a standalone for each individual?
We would love for it to be a social experience, but at this point it's going to be a standalone.
Are the mangrove forests under siege?
They're absolutely under siege by developers and fish farms and shrimp farms. We are tearing down hectares and hectares of mangroves daily. And what we should be doing is actually replanting them and kind of using them as a tool to re-engineer our cities and to protect our cities against sea level rise and against climate change and storms. We're really being, for lack of a better word, stupid about this.
I have just kind of one question. I wouldn't really label it as a question though. I really like the idea of biomimicry, sort of taking the idea of plants and the lily pad and designing that into a building. Is that something that you'll be teaching the students as well?
Yep, so this project came out of 3 classes. One was at Rasmus, which is our School of Atmospheric Sciences that teaches mangrove ecology. Interactive media, which had the interaction designers, and it also had architecture students, and the architecture students were tasked to build a city, and biomimicry was their directive. And that's something we want to talk about more. The lily pad houses, we couldn't talk about it right now, but they really have all sorts of environmental systems to allow the air to flow quickly through them. They float up and down, and things like that we really want to kind of enhance on, but we can't right now.
Okay, with that, I want to give a big round of applause and thanks to Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, Waste Warrior, please step to the back and get mic'd up and finalize your AV. And then let's please welcome to the stage Giuliano Khalil to present The Sea is Coming.
All right. And I think we can mute the sound until I switch to the demo, please. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and staying this long with us. I am here to talk about The Sea is Coming. I just want to say a quick shout out to the team in Brazil. I know the guys are wake late to watch this. Thank you so much for all the work this last few weeks. So I'm going to talk about The Sea is Coming. So there are some studies showing that at mid-century, you're going to have about 600 million people at risk from coastal flooding, high tides, and sea level rise. And that number goes to more than 1 billion people by 2100. And my mentor, Gary Griggs, is one of the biggest authorities on sea level rise,
recently said that sea level rise is going to be the biggest challenge that human civilization has ever faced. And there are some good news on the one hand. We know what we need to do. We know how to solve these problems, right? We have the solutions at hand. The issue is that we're not acting on it. There's not enough engagement. There's not enough political will. That's what we're missing. So we really need to build more awareness, reach a wider audience, and that's kind of what we're aiming here. So our approach through The Sea is Coming is really to focus on youth awareness. There are 2 professors on the team, so we're really big believers that education empowers youth to drive the changes that we need. This is an innovative game, so you learn from your choices and you can experience alternative futures as you play the game. And it's scalable, so the model is replicable to any coastal city. We actually have all the back end developed for the game in preparation for this, and it's accessible too. So we're Virtual Planet. We have a team of multidisciplinary skills. As we all know here, right, it takes a village to create this app. So we have storytellers, artists, 3D modelers, climate scientists. So it's a really fun group. And we develop about a dozen or more VR experiences now, focused on different aspects of climate change. Our major this thing is going by itself. The major focus has been sea level rise and coastal issues. So we have about 10 cities that we developed, the Sea Level Rise Explorer. And that's kind of the core of the game that we developed. We use that framework to really come up with the Sea is Coming. And our theory of change behind this is like, we really think that through understanding risks and solutions, that generates awareness. And awareness is really the base that we need for more informed decisions and also in higher engagement levels and participatory decision making. And that leads to sustainable practices that can enhance our resilience and also lower emissions. And that allows us to advocate for better policies to really make those changes that we need, right? Really driving the change. So, and we all know too, VR and XR, it's a very powerful tool, especially, it builds this sense of self-efficacy and agency, and that leads to higher engagement with complex issues such as sea level rise, right? And we are actually seeing some results of that on our tools. We developed a Dive. It's a journey through marine protected areas in California that was designed for mid-schoolers. We did a little survey, and 90% of the kids showed higher engagement. So they were eager to tell the family and friends about the game. 75% increased their knowledge. A majority could remember 5 marine protected area species. And 20% even wrote letters to their state senators and assembly members. So our goal is to reach 27,000 players with the game. And the way we're planning to do that is 10,000 high school students in California, 10,000 students in Espírito Santo in Brazil. So we have the Secretary of Education is super interested, so we're looking at launching the game with them. And we also have another 7,000 players that we're thinking through college, graduate students, community members, city staff, and some elected officials as well. We created an impact campaign that we're working on it for the US, and then also going to deliver it for Brazil. And we have all the partners that you see here. They know about the game, they heard about it, they talked to me about it. They're all ready and waiting to play the game, right? So we have this base that's ready to go. So let's play the game. Just a quick intro. You're going to see me playing the game. So I'm a Brazilian immigrant. I lived in the US for 20 plus years. I studied this. I have a clear preference for nature-based solutions. So you're going to see my bias will come through on the decisions I'll make through the game. But everyone plays it their own way. So let me switch here.
Nearly 70% of California's beaches may vanish by 2100.
Can anything be done to save some of our country's most beautiful beaches?
Affirming what we already know. The climate isn't just going to change, it already has.
4 million people in the West remain under flood alerts.
California declaring a state of emergency tonight.
Streets are under 17 feet of water.
You have just enough fuel to use this time machine to journey back through time and protect Santa Cruz twice. The city's fate is in your hands. Press the green button. We are now back in Santa Cruz in 2023. Check out the iconic beach boardwalk. Yep, there's the Giant Dipper coaster, and behind it, the beach flats, a unique sea level community of about 1,500 people. Decisions shape destinies, and you are not alone. There are no right answers, and the trade-offs are plentiful. These are your advisors. Listen to them, learn from them.
Guess which one I'm going to choose.
A living shoreline is an effective coastal protection strategy, but it requires much more frequent refilling as sea levels rise. The cost of maintaining a broad beachfront became a significant financial burden, and the right type of sand has been harder to find. Early warning systems save lives by providing alerts about approaching natural disasters, ensuring the safety of the beach flats community. However, little was done to protect the shoreline against the rising seas. The seawall protects the community from erosion and storm damage, but can have environmental impacts, and maintenance costs are high. Oh no! The city ran out of maintenance funds and the seawall crumbled. The beach flats community flooded with devastating impacts. Luckily, there's still some fuel left in your time machine. You've got one more shot, one more opportunity to save Santa Cruz. Well done. You have a clear preference for nature-based solutions. They not only protect the area, but also draw in tourists and locals, which is good for the economy. But, as you already know by now, the cost of keeping the wide beach can become a financial strain, and the right type of sand can be hard to find. With increasingly frequent and intense wildfires, thousands of climate refugees are fleeing to Santa Cruz in search of shelter and cooler coastal temperatures. Your proactive efforts in addressing the housing crisis and providing refuge saved countless lives, but the shoreline is losing the battle against the rising seas. Managed retreat involves the intentional relocation of communities and infrastructure from vulnerable coastal areas to reduce risks and restore natural ecosystems. Although this is a challenging proposition, it is an essential coastal management strategy that can save lives. As a result of your decisions, future generations will now be able to enjoy this great location for decades to follow. Here are the choices made by other players. Are there clear preferences emerging? Which strategies seem to be selected more often? Remember, there are no right answers, and the trade-offs are plentiful.
All right.
Thank you for playing The Sea is Coming. Play it again. Make different choices. Learn more about the potential futures of the city. What other unexpected challenges await you on your quest to save Santa Cruz?
Okay, that was the game. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Take some questions. My glasses so I can see you too.
I was wondering if this is supposed to be a companion piece to the other more community-focused Sea Level Rise Explorer that you'd built, or how they might go
So
together?
at the moment, we thought of it as a new independent thing, but I just presented this to the city of Santa Cruz on Friday, and they were like, we want this. We really want to include this into our engagement efforts right away. So as soon as it's ready, I think they're going to use it. But it's more like its own thing. The synergies that a lot of the visuals that we develop for the Sea Level Rise Explorer fit in here. So we have another, I think we're going on 10 now, maybe 11 cities. We just did Stinson Beach, and we have West Palm Beach. So a lot of those 3D aerial images are ready to go, and the engine is there. So it's really scalable in that way that the complicated part of the decision making and all that logic is already built in. We just need to change kind of the content of the story, right? And make it appropriate to each city. We don't have mangroves in California, unfortunately, but we'll have them in Miami.
I really like the idea of how you focus on climate adaptation. I think that's something really important. And you mentioned a little bit about like youth engagement and sort of building that intergenerational bridge. My question is, this is really focused on long-term planning, specifically with policy. And when you try to engage young people, are you thinking of maybe including other resources that will help them, let's say, take steps in their community for climate adaptation, or what are you thinking in that space?
Yeah, so we also have a class plan that comes with it with some materials that we were offering. And some of those, like for Dive with the mid-schoolers, there was an activity, like if they wanted, they could write a letter to their senators, or they could talk to their parents and the family about what they saw. So it's very similar to this game as well. So the idea is that there's going to be like a little kit that they can bring with it, so we can bring it to the schools or to maybe a community event, right? I think the great thing of focusing on high school students is that it works for everyone, right? You just keep the vocabulary accessible, and you can use that through an elected official, through, I had a slide I had to take off for time, but there was like a 93-year-old person using some of the VRs, and he was like, oh my God, look at that. So we know how it really captures people, right, when they go through that.
So in terms of impact, do you think your efforts are better spent on focusing on getting X thousands of students in one locale using it versus expanding the application for other coastal cities?
So one thing that we learned a little bit through the Sea Level Rise Explorer is that we did the first app was for Santa Cruz, and we found that people all over the place were using it. So because it's that location doesn't mean that other places won't use it. So we're trying to find for like key places that represent other places as well, right? It doesn't make sense to do one of this for each coastal city in California, but it makes sense to do one for maybe Long Beach that's very different than Santa Cruz, and maybe Isla Vista in Santa Barbara, or if you go to Delaware, right, Chesapeake Bay. So we can find this representative locations that then other places can use it as well. So it's kind of, but I hadn't thought of that too. So I think that's a good way to maybe enhance the impact, is like expand too, right? So, yeah. Oh, that goes fast. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, in situ, please step to the back and get mic'd up. And I would like to welcome to the stage Janine Jung to present Waste Warrior.
Great, so let's get started. I'm Janine Jung, and that's my 8-year-old son, Otis. He's also my consultant on all my work related to location-based augmented reality, location AR. Otis really likes finding stuff on maps, and he likes collecting stuff or points as he goes along. And when I discussed the XR Prize with him last year, he came up with the idea of Waste Warrior. So Waste Warrior is a location-based augmented reality game we're piloting in Singapore to educate people about their local recycling program. For kids like Otis and for grown-ups like me, climate change feels like a really dire and daunting global problem. So when we focus on very specific actions like recycling, it's moving without me telling to. So when we focus on specific actions that we can sort of cut down to size and bring home the problem, we make it a local problem, a real-world problem, and that's the sort of problem that we think location AR is very good at bringing to life. So, why Singapore? Well, I wanted to launch a pilot in a very small and manageable way so we could work with an engaged local partner that could help us with marketing data and content and support so that we could actually move forward and really tie it back to climate impact ultimately. So the NEA, the National Environmental Agency in Singapore, really fit the bill on this with lots of public information about things like branding resources, recycling guidelines, and events like this map of locations where you can go and exchange your trash for cash for trash locations. So thanks to this awesome effort on behalf of the NEA all these years, there's actually a decent level of awareness about recycling in Singapore. Again, it's going back. Every household in Singapore is provisioned with one of these very iconic blue recycling bins, and about 60% of households in Singapore report that they recycle regularly. But it turns out that 40% of items that you find in blue recycling bins are contaminated or they just weren't recyclable at all in the first place. So the infrastructure and the public will to recycle is there, but this shows that there's a gap in the recycling education. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to reinforce existing recycling programs so that people learn how to recycle properly. Sorry, you guys. So people learn how to recycle properly, and what they can actually do is learn about local initiatives, and we think we can do this through a simple game. So simple, but location-based AR experiences are notoriously hard to find and access. So established platforms like Snapchat or Instagram, these platforms have great distribution, but very limited mapping functionality. So people also don't want to download a whole new app for this sort of thing. So we built Waste Warriors end-to-end in WebAR so that you can immediately try it out and go straight to the experience without having to download anything. No download required. So here's a quick look at how it works as a demo. You go to the map and you find locations with the nearest trash monster. You scan a recycling bin, and you immediately dive right into this game where you can start swiping items as they show up in random order. And you swipe to toss, and when you feed a trash monster items that are recyclable, you get points. You get it wrong, and you lose points. It's that simple. And the real-time visual feedback helps to reinforce what you're learning. So basically, when you've done this, the ultimate reward if you're recycling correctly is you are a true waste warrior, and you get this very unique artifact and AR helmet that you can try on. So once you do this, you can actually upgrade your helmet by earning more points, and you can share your look and show off to your friends. This is Otis's favorite part. In fact, all of our creative choices, even though the game can be played by anyone, all of our creative choices were picked so that we could appeal to this demographic of Otis, preteens and up, like teenagers. So we went through a few iterations once we derived the look of this trash monster from Rubber Gloves, and we really struck the balance between cute but not too infantile. And then we really put in the work to capture things like lighting conditions and to emulate flying to make it look photorealistic. We also incorporated cultural elements to make sure that it resonated with the local audience. So this helmet was inspired by historical styles as well as a very beloved icon in Singapore, the Merlion. And we also had a little bit of help from generative AI tech to get us started. So we also made very beautiful 3D assets. This is the most beautiful trash that I've seen. Very beautiful 3D assets of trash based on the guidelines from the NEA. And again, throughout the game, what we've done here is we've optimized for a very photorealistic visual effect combined with proven game mechanics so that we could make it fun and engaging to play this game, all within the limitations of WebAR. So you can try it out for yourself. I've unlocked this demo version so you don't have to be in Singapore. You can just scan this and try it out from wherever you are. Just tap training to just start right away and get started. This is a friend of a friend playing the game in Singapore. What you'll see very quickly is that Waste Warrior demonstrates how AR can have the unique capability of training task-oriented actions that are tied to real-world problems. So now we just need to get people to play it. So Bob Fine had some great questions in the feedback where he said, how do you get this to become the next Pokemon Go? How do you market this and actually scale this beyond Singapore? Hold on to the last thought, but I want to point out that for a game like this, it's not really necessary to reach the heights of Pokemon Go. The marketing tactics to get someone to reach the level that you need to get for a ad-driven global blockbuster like Pokemon Go are very different from a hyperlocal casual game that you just want people to play so that they can get the hang of recycling. So this is not easy, but also not crazy talk. So this is the ecosystem of waste management stakeholders in Singapore. We have found that the NEA is partnered with the Ministry of Education, and they distribute sustainable material about sustainable habits to secondary schools all over Singapore, reaching every single student across the country. We know that the private waste collectors engage with citizens on a daily basis through collection activity, as well as informational events. And we've spoken with an NGO who asked us whether we could add their eco-points to the map. These are monthly events that they work on in collaboration with resident communities so that they can have events where people come to recycle in public housing units every month. And they said, can we have this app or this game so that kids who tag along with their parents and are bored can actually have something to do that's related to the event? So that's great, but we think there's lots to do in the app itself. And I think Erica had some very good questions in the initial feedback about how we can make this more engaging in the user experience. Our MVP is a couple weeks old, so right now user surveys are friends and family. But we've already gotten some good validation on assumptions, as well as some feedback about how to drive adoption further. One, can we add a leaderboard to add a competitive element? Can we juice up the game mechanics by speeding it up, for example, to earn more points? Or can we find different trash monsters at different locations to kind of collect them all? And this last idea is my favorite. Can we actually put more skin in the game by adding real physical rewards? So can we feature sustainable products from brands that are local and then add them as prizes for kids who have the highest score or to go to events? This is an example of an ice cream brand that we reached out to in Singapore that just made their packaging 100% recyclable. So what does all of that up to? So this is the status quo in Singapore. In 2021, Singaporeans generated about over 300,000 tons of CO2 emissions from domestic waste sent to waste incinerators. On top of this, you have methane emissions from landfill and the opportunity cost of manufacturing raw materials when you don't recycle. So, and we got here again because, well, many people know how about recycling, they're not doing it right. So small changes in behavior can start having an impact, and we can track all this in partnership with the NEA with their survey and measurement tools that they already have. And if we believe that we can reach all the houses in Singapore with teens and preteens that are older than 11, and again, we just need to reach one motivated person per household, and we apply results from recent studies on video game-based learning, we think we can see up to about a 4% reduction of 13,000 tons in Singapore. So this is what we modeled. I know, this doesn't seem like that much because Singapore's emissions are truly a drop in the ocean when you compare it to what's happening in the rest of the world, where domestic waste generates about 1.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions, which makes up about 5% of total global emissions. When you look at these ratios too, you'll see that the rest of the world has a long way to catch up to Singapore's current recycling rate. And I view this as an opportunity for even larger gains for education. So if we conservatively apply what we've modeled in Singapore, a 4% reduction rate, we're talking about seeing a potential reduction of 64 million tons of emissions all over the world. Of course, you can't just sort of airdrop Waste Warrior from Singapore into other countries. Recycling guidelines are very inconsistent from city to city, not to mention cultural and language differences. So we think that every city needs its own Waste Warrior. Our creative can be customized and tailored to recycling programs everywhere, and we can go to market in every city with the right local partners once we've established a playbook and proven our case in Singapore. So the bones of the platform are already there. We just need to configure assets and rules, which we think we can do with these new tools that we're working with, and scale up to more partners so that we can work with more of them. Here are a couple of examples of partners that we've talked to already. This is one of the 3 private waste collectors in Singapore who asked us if we could customize this to reach not only Singapore, but to other markets outside of Singapore. This is a Singaporean chapter of a global NGO that does very hands-on recycling events, who asked us if we could reach out to the other chapters all over the world. And this one, thanks to AWE and this channel, was an inbound I got from LinkedIn. This is a GovTech leader in Hong Kong who asked me if they could get the app for Hong Kong. So inspired by this, I've thrown up a very simple landing page to start gauging interest from climate impact and recycling advocates everywhere, with the hope of starting to see waste warriors in more cities in the world, who not just recycle correctly, but also start making better consumer and lifestyle choices based on what they've learned about products in this game. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I have one question about like your marketing technique. How do you plan to market this to young teens?
I think this is a great question. I used to work at Snapchat, and there's a lot of focus on like online marketing. I think for hyper-local games like this, it's really much more traditional. So with the NEA, for example, they can plaster every single housing unit with QR codes, and they can also reach out to schools and do handouts as well. And I think for hyper-local activities, that makes a lot more sense than like geo-targeted ads on TikTok or whatever it is. I also think, and I really need to boost this more in the app, that word of mouth, I think someone has a slide earlier today as well, word of mouth is everything. And if like more kids are playing this, and the sharing isn't just look at my cool helmet, it's a link to the application, I think that will help a lot. Apparently. Well, thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to my team also that made this all the way from Ukraine. So thank you very much for all the trouble.
Well done. Okay, bringing up the rear, we have our last presentation of this evening. I'd like to welcome to the stage Dana Kormeshev with Team In Situ.
Hello, hear me? Hi, everybody. Thank you for waiting or for going through this, the amazing presentation so far. I'm Dana. I'm the founder and CEO of In Situ. I'm an architect in my background, originally from Tel Aviv, Israel. Practiced as an architect in the city center of Tel Aviv, moved to New York in 2017 to study urban data science in NYU, and founded In Situ in 2020. So first, In Situ, augmented reality-powered urban development. The name means in its natural place. This is how we believe we will all be able and should be able to experience urban change. In Situ is on the mission to bring future cities or the future of cities to life through augmented reality to foster collaboration around the process of urban change. The problem is our cities are at the forefront of every 21st century urban challenge, from climate disasters, climate mitigation, housing shortage, declining infrastructures, broadband, geopolitics, urbanization, migration. All of these, our cities are the first to suffer from and will be the first to solve for. The problem is we must adapt fast and effectively to mitigate these challenges. We planners, architects, policymakers put so much effort to design for complex plans and solutions, but time after time, we fail to communicate our visions. We fail to engage people and to engage the different stakeholders groups into the needed, required changes to actually make these solutions work. In Situ creates elegant, informative AR experiences from all this messy, inaccessible data into a clear view of the future of buildings and infrastructure which can be viewed at the building, neighborhood, district, or even city level. All of this information is publicly available. It's just very inaccessible to the non-professional or to the human being, and therefore we are committed to build the lowest friction, most natural user experience, actually letting people seamlessly understand how their built environment, how their streets and neighborhoods are changing. We are channeling our content through mobile AR to meet people where they are and creating multiple touch points for them to discover and explore and engage with their changing surroundings, from the on-site signage, web map, browser-based AR, native apps, and to leveraging social media AR such as Instagram and Snapchat. Now, why AR? So I started my career before I became an architect in the Israeli Air Force as a flight simulator trainer of an F-15. I trained F-15 pilots on a fully immersed simulator and observed for 3 years how powerful it was for them to actually train with their bodies on their day-to-day processes or in-flight functions. When I became an architect and planner and thought of how to apply the same methodology to engage people with urban development, I understood that the most natural environment for people, for non-professionals, is actually just the streets. And therefore, AR is the most accessible, the most intuitive, and the most empowering for letting people interact with the future of the built environment exactly the same way we are all interacting day to day with the existing built environment. We don't need to be professionals to feel the difference between Midtown Manhattan, Brooklyn, or Santa Clara. And therefore, AR can allow us the same experience for the future and the changes of our streets. So we launched In-Situ in 2021 and had the chance to pilot across the US with real projects, real clients, to observe how community members actually perceive our solution and interact with the AR. We iterated based on the feedback and built this multi-channel solution. Some selected projects from mixed-use development in downtown Columbus, Ohio, densifying the city, to assessing different development scenarios. No text there, sorry. Different development scenarios and their impact on their communities in kind of a storytelling AR through climate resiliency waterfront park and the bridge that connects a siloed community with this new park. Infill development, we leveraged AR occluders to show communities how addition of development rights will actually look and impact their neighborhoods. Landmark preservation and mitigating impacts of human movement on wildlife with this exciting project from last fall, collaborating with SNAP and the Annenberg Foundation on the wildlife crossing outside of LA. With all of this, we always measured and always measuring the who, so the engagement numbers, who is participating, how many participating, demographics of participants, and also the sentiment of the conversation. We proved that we are, because our solution is very accessible and so intuitive, we actually very easily broadening participation and bring much more diverse and representative audience to the conversation, very different than the classic participants in city planning hearings. We bring younger, more economically diverse, more renters to the table. In terms of the sentiment, these aggressive, very angry faces that I don't know who of you was trying to communicate their projects in planning hearings, but I have, and it's not nice. These angry faces become suddenly spark in people's eyes when they see this magic of AR, of projects in their real future site as if they're already built. And the conversation, even if not always pro-development, is always more informative, always more respectful, more collaborative conversation that we were able to create. And at this point, we were in a very interesting position. We built this amazing tool. We felt that we understand the ground, we understand how people interact, what needs to be in the tool to make them engaged. But we also kept doing that project by project. And we asked ourselves, how can we solve for this, all of the open data out there that we started from, about permits, about rezonings, about plans, that is just sitting there and we keep doing project by project? How can we ingest large scale of data sets, open data, into our platform to generate full citywide layer of the future? And we decided to prototype with New York City open data. After my graduation from NYU, I worked for 6 months in the Department of City Planning, so I knew the data a little bit and knew some people. And we took several data sets. I will not bother you with how non-accessible and non-standardized they were, but we created one source of truth of upcoming changes to the built environment of New York, and generated all of them in 3D based on tabular data representing their physical assets and their impact, and published all of them in the future sites in AR. So we actually created this layer of the future of New York City. All of you are able to access it in our in situ map. Each one of the project, when you click on it, you see the open data, the description, the information, the applicant, and also a QR to just, again, let you be one QR away or one click away from seeing the future and seeing projects. We also ask ourselves, okay, how can we let people know that we did it? Because it's augmented reality, no one knows about us, no one knows about it. And we started to burst the streets of New York. It was beginning of the year. We are a small team. Ziv is here with me. 3 people in New York burst the New York winter streets with some QR codes and flooded New York with its future, basically. I will show now the demo of what was the experience, or what is the experience, because it's still there for people in New York. But just before that, we keep tracking the engagement. Luckily, people post-COVID really trust QR codes and actually just scan them when they walk near them. So we have so far more than 1,500 organic AR views, more than 48 hours of New Yorkers seeing the actual future of different sites. And in this data set that we brought to life, there are more than 175,000 future upcoming housing units. So in terms of how to mitigate people's concerns about densifying cities, densifying neighborhoods, here people can actually explore them on the block level. I will move to my phone for the demo. Let's hope that it will. Okay, this is Bella. And this is the sign that we always put in the street. We put both the app clip, which lets people interact and pre-download, so they don't need to know about our app or anything in order to actually get and see the AR. The app clip and the AR in the app is geo-anchored, so I will not open it because Richardson Street is in Brooklyn. But we also have the web AR in each of the sites, so people can actually see this project page with all of the, again, just data that we scraped from the open data, and we can see the real scale off-site AR view. Let's just put it. So we can actually see it from everywhere. Again, when it's on site with the native AR, it's geo-anchored, perfectly located. Just a second. In each of the channels, we have the ability to provide feedback. So again, very easily, we are part of the change without the need to be available in Zoom or any community meeting. For you all, I know we are the last ones, so you can go outside and see we planted a fake project here in the parking lot. So there it is. You can go and just look for the decal. And some other fun stuff or exciting things for us this summer is first, again, as a way to build awareness about the tool, we started to do walks in the future of different neighborhoods of New York. So we had 3 so far in Washington Square and 2 in Williamsburg and Greenpoint. We have another one if you're going to be in New York in 2 weeks in Hell's Kitchen, and we'll have more. And I'm very, very excited to announce that the next step for us was, okay, how to do it now with cities, with actual partnership and commitment from the city to deploy these QR codes. We announced several weeks ago our first cities cohort, and we already signed with Washington, D.C. Department of Buildings, Denver Department of City Planning, and Charleston Department of Buildings to actually do exactly what we did in New York, to take all of their open data and give it back to them as AR experiences, which are available in each of the future sites. We will provide them with the AR on the app, on a map, and with the decals and signage. They will be responsible to now deploy it at the city scale and not as guerrilla marketing as we did here in New York. two of our trusted partners were Ghost, Snap, and now a partner. And Esri are the world's leading GIS platform, so that's how we plan to scale and stay up to date with the most advanced technology of both GIS and AR. And now, why now? So I presented In-Situ for the first time in AWE October 19 in Munich. I was 7 months pregnant, world did not know what COVID is, and people thought I'm an alien in the room when I talked about city planning and AR. The world has changed. I think today I'm super optimistic about the ability to actually bring this solution at scale globally. There is a political momentum here in the US and outside of the US to actually rethink the most highly regulated processes to become really more transparent and empowering and embedding new technologies and Web3 technologies in order to allow that. The technology just became better and better since 2019. And as you all know, is much more ubiquitous and powerful. And most of all, we don't have time, we don't have choice. Stagnated, counterproductive, exclusive planning really costs lives, and we cannot allow for that anymore. I think all of us saw during COVID how political alignment of the changes that we need to do to mitigate COVID allowed for open streets and outdoors dining, and how after climate disasters, communities and politicians and designers coming together to really build better. Let's not wait for the next disaster. Let's just build better now with effective participation. These two, I don't know who here is from New York, Robert Moses and Jane Jacobs, the two heroes of urban planning of the 1960s in New York. I think historically planning was always a fight. I truly believe that AR can make it a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for such a great presentation, and congratulations on all you've already achieved with this project. I have two questions. One is, was that Mayor Adams that you were showing it to?
Yes.
In that picture?
Yeah.
Nice.
Mayor Adams, and it's not yet official, but we're trying to make something more official with New York City, both city planning and the mayor's office.
Very cool. And my other question is, when people are viewing this in AR, will they also get information on like the embodied carbon of that particular building or the LEED certification targets?
Absolutely.
How can this experience promote greener architecture?
So this is something that we, since the beginning, were always very focused on this data enrichment of projects, or communicating not just the 3D or the massing, but also the impact. I think, again, the same as the planning, all the other aspects of planning, also the impact or the environmental impact review is publicly available, yet very inaccessible. We now have the ability, project by project, to allow this information. I think in the wildlife crossing, we kind of summarized a lot of the impact into bite-sized experience, very interactive to educate people. We don't yet do it in the automated kind of open data to citywide layer scale, but that's definitely where we're heading to also automating the impact of planning on this generation and pipeline. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to Dana and the In-Situ team.
Thank you.
We've made it. Yes. We've got a little bit of a toast coming up, and I don't know if Sam or Goopy or anybody back there wants to work with Antigone. I think she might be outside getting it ready. Go ahead and bring it in. But while we do that, I want to call a quick audible, and I want to ask the judges if they have any remarks they want to share. And no pressure if you don't have anything to say, but you haven't really had the chance to say much. You've been taking a lot in as we close things up. Any observations or closing thoughts you want to share with everybody?
Maybe I'll start. First, I want to say thank you to the AWE team for this huge opportunity to bring me here to California to hear all your amazing presentations and for putting this together. I'm really excited for the conference tomorrow. I also just want to say huge congratulations to all the teams. Regardless whether or not you win, you're all doing amazing work in the climate space, and I think that's like a win by itself. Because we need everyone together, both in tech, in policy, and advocacy, to work together to really solve and mitigate the climate crisis. So just want to say a huge thank you to all of you as well.
None of us is going to go after that. I think it's booze time, right?
Go for it, Tom.
Sarah, tell everybody how old you are.
I'm actually 18.
The world is going to survive. Because people like Sarah, all these folks. So I started working on VR in 1966 and AR. And back to what Dane was mentioning, fighter cockpits and things like that. That's what I was working on. And I was actually flying the fighter airplanes with some of this equipment. And by the way, Dace was one of my students at the University of Washington. But I just, I wanted to give everybody, all the contestants, a perfect score, because I know what's underneath all that work and the passion that it takes to do something, but especially realizing a problem and that we have these tools that can help with that. Now, we aren't trying to force technology into some solutions, but if it works, it works. And one of the things we have with this new technology is the incredible power to actually awaken our spatial memory and help us to do things we've never been able to do before, and unlock something that's inside of us. And especially back to the conversation, instead of argument into conversation. Dace went over to Venice on a project to actually map part of Venice. What year was that?
95. 96.
95, 96, with a team of other students and lab people from the University of Washington, in order to help the city determine how to put a new bridge in, because they didn't want to destroy the motif of the area. And so they mapped, and this is when things were really sort of clunky. But that showed the power of the technology in order to help people visualize things they wouldn't be able, and especially the kids. For the kids to learn what it means to recycle or to paddle in a mangrove forest. So I just want to thank all of the contestants. Thanks, Dace, for inviting me to participate with these amazing judges, and for all of you who came and participated. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, thanks for those comments, guys. Really appreciate it. It's a few housekeeping notes as we kind of close things up. First of all, of course, there's money at stake. You may have heard about that. We will be announcing the winners in just a couple of nights. The Augie Awards are Thursday evening, 7 o'clock. Of course, the XR Prize will be featured among many, many Augie Awards, but feel free, please, to come and enjoy the festivities and see all the awards, and hopefully be there for the big reveal. And again, that's Thursday evening. As we break for a toast, I just want to share just a few quick comments. So first of all, I am so inspired by all of you and your thought and care that you've put into these presentations and your ideas, all the creative solutions. There's been a wonderful and broad diversity of solutions. I think we have all seen that tonight. That is going to translate to a very difficult decision by the judges. I don't envy them, because there's a lot of apples to oranges going on here tonight with all the diversity. So they've got a challenge ahead of them to pick a winner. And on that note, I want to express my sincere thanks to Bob, Tom, Marina, Sarah, and Erica. And a thank you to all of you. I'm proud of all of you. It's been wonderful to engage with you. You should all be proud of yourselves. Proud to be associated with such powerful leaders and voices in applying XR in the fight against climate change. So thanks again for a wonderful afternoon and evening. I think there's a toast, some beverages to come with it. So thank you again.